You're listening to the Bring Me the Axe. I'm going to do that again.
You blew it. 5 seconds into it.
Does not bode well. You're listening to Bring Me the Axe. I'm Bryan White. I'm one half of this morbid equation, and I'm joined by my co-host, an actual brother, Dave White. I am fucking this up like crazy. I'm just going to let this roll. I'm just going to let it roll. Dave, how you doing?
Yeah. Oh, hey. I'm all right. You know what I was just thinking about before we started this here recording was I was thinking about how in the 60s, there were so many television shows that were about rural people and rural environments. You got Green Acres and Petticoat Junction,
Beverly
Hillbillies, like even Mr. Ed, which took place in Los Angeles, was still a decidedly Western feeling. And I thought, how weird is it that there were this like over-representation of rural populations on television at a time when most rural people probably didn't have a television.
That's right, or running water, or
that's pretty weird.
It's pretty fucking strange, yeah. Yeah, it's pretty crazy.
Good shows, though.
Yeah, I'll tell you what. You know what it was is they had all those like Western sets left over, and they were like, we got to do something with them, you know. And then like the next thing you know, they kind of give it up, and then the Spawn Ranch falls into disrepair, and it's just all history from there.
And then Sharon Tate's dead.
God damn it! It's just the death of the Western. It's all their fault. Yeah.
Yep.
So we practically grew up in neighborhood video stores, and the steady diet of utter garbage that those shops provided us with continues unabated to this day. There's no one else I enjoy chopping it up with more about trashy movies than Dave. So just before we get into it, here's a little housekeeping. If you want to keep up with us between episodes, you can also find us on Instagram at Bring Me the Axe Pod, and Dave's over there at That Queer Wolf, and we're having a really good time. We got a whole new thing we're doing like weekly with sort of like a mystery double feature. It's a good time. Subscribe, follow us over there. You know, we do it in the stories, and we keep it up. It's a good time.
I mean, I do it in my head all the time
Jesus
anyway.
Christ.
I may as well do it on the internet.
And it was cool. Like the last time we did it, it was fun. We had a lot of really good responses, way more Scream 3s than I think I was expecting, but I think that's...
Yeah, for the record, my recommendation was Shadow of the Vampire, and I'm pretty sure that was the best choice, but...
Yeah, I went with Demons, you know. So, yeah.
That's just a horror movie that's in a horror movie, though.
Well, no, that was the whole thing. It's horror movies and horror movies. I didn't really have a whole thing. But we got a sweet website now at bringmetheaxe.com. You can listen to all of our past shows there, read the transcripts. I'm actually a little bit behind on that. I got to get that updated. And if you don't know, we have another show called 99 Cent Rental, where we cover all manner of video store madness on the weeks that Bring Me the Axe is off. So our latest episode covering polyester is out now, and we'll be back next week with a look at Phantom of the Paradise.
I feel like that polyester episode was like 7 weeks ago.
Well, you know what? I think it was because we recorded it a long time ago. But yeah. So that Phantom of the Paradise is going to be the last one that we post in the Bring Me the Axe feed. So if you are enjoying it, you're going to want to go over to 99 Cent Rental and subscribe there if you want to keep getting notifications when new episodes drop. So you can also contact us directly at bringmetheaxepod@gmail.com with any questions, comments, or suggestions. Do let us know if there's a movie that you love and would like to hear us give it the business. And lastly, if you like what you hear, you can subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts. We're on YouTube now. Search us by name. Subscribe there if you prefer to consume your podcasts that way. And be doing us a favor by leaving us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Now's the point where I give you all a hard time about doing that. If you have not done it yet, but you really ought to.
Just do it. It's really important.
Super simple, and it makes me feel so good when I see that number go up. So if you haven't done it yet, just do it. It takes a second, literally. Yep. And if you listen on YouTube, do us a favor, give the episode a like and leave a comment. We do love hearing from you guys. So I just want to get all that out of the way right at the top of the show because I'm about to give you a taste of what we're doing tonight.
Yeah, it's a very special bonus episode. Episode.
It's a bad time, this time of year.
How many times is he going to tell this story?
Oh, let him tell it. I love fairy tales.
This ain't no fairy tale, little girl. If you don't take it seriously, you're a fool!
Valentine's dance in 20 years. Has to be something special.
Look, Landers, you gotta get a lot of exercise if you're gonna grapple with Gretchen.
Oh, yeah? Well, I got a Valentine for her that she's never gonna forget.
Oh, Howard.
Right to the heart, huh?
Howard.
In this town on Valentine's Day, everybody loses their heart.
Roses are red, violets are blue. One is dead, and so are you.
It can't be happening again.
No.
It can't be happening again.
What's going on over in Valentine Bluffs? It looks like Harry Warden's back in town.
It happened once. It happened twice. Cancel the dance or it'll happen twice.
In the town of Valentine Bluffs, there are many ways to die. Take your pick. My Bloody Valentine.
Yep, My Bloody Valentine. It's a seasonal.
I'm going
favorite.
to say this is my third favorite horror film.
Like of them all.
Yeah.
Huh.
I love this movie so much.
I enjoyed it.
I get excited
enjoyed
just
a great
thinking
deal.
about it.
It's definitely one of my favorite slasher movies for certain. And it took a long time for me to really come around to that, because the available versions of it until about like 2009 were really
2008 was when the remake came out.
Yeah. So yeah, so this movie got butchered real hard. Now I'll talk about it a little bit when we get there. I had a version of this in the 90s that actually had that like footage that the studio insisted was lost.
Well, some of it is actually lost. So there's about 9 minutes that got cut. 5 minutes of it have been restored. The other 4, I think, are just gone.
Yeah. Yeah. So So this was the question I wanted to ask you. Is this the most Canadian movie that we have covered yet? Because we've done another, and it is really Canadian.
Well, I think Peanut Butter Solution is the most Canadian movie we've ever covered.
Yeah, because this one is pretty fucking close.
But Peanut Butter Solution is very French Canadian. This is just Canadian, which might be why I love it so much, because I am on record as not just a big fan of Canadian horror or Canadian film, but just Canada in general.
Canada in general. You love hockey? You love poutine?
I do not love hockey. I do love poutine. I ate some the other day.
I love poutine also. Like, I need a real solid poutine hookup, and we're reasonably close to Canada, so it shouldn't be as hard as it is. But yeah,
if you were listening, Michael might correct you and say it's poutine.
Poutin.
And I would say, get out of here! You're not on this show.
I know, but he could be. We should have him as a guest sometime.
Good,
because he's got thoughts.
He's 15 feet away. It wouldn't be that hard.
Yep. Here we are. My Bloody Valentine with special guest Mikey. I'm going to call him that next time I see him that. So shall we do the facts?
Sure, get it.
All right. So the year was 1981.
That was a good year.
It was a good year. As I'm about to tell you, here's some other movies that were released that year. Number 1. Final Exam came out in 1981.
Oh, Jesus. Everybody just calm down. Put your pants back on. I know everybody loves that fucking movie.
Yep. Yeah. So, refer to our Final Exam movie, which is mostly a love letter to Radish. Yep. Also released in 1981, Tobe Hooper's The Funhouse.
Yeah, also a good movie.
That's a good movie. Alive. Also in 1981, Blood Beach.
Not a good movie.
No, but it's at the very least, it's a unique movie. It was a monster movie that came out at a time when monster movies were really not in vogue.
I think of it more as an animal attack movie, even though I guess they're less of an animal than a monster, I guess. So
yeah. Let's see. Also, number 4, Fear No Evil, which is that Frank LaLoggia
Oh.
Yeah, yeah. Not a very good movie. It's a very, very weird movie.
But Frank LaLoggia, he really, really tried a bunch of times, and he never really hit it, except for that one that was kind of big.
What
the fuck is it called? Lady in White? Is that what it's called?
Oh shit! Yeah, that's right. That's a pretty good movie.
Yeah, that one's okay.
Yeah, but Fear No Evil. I'll tell you what it does have going for it. It's got a fucking kick-ass soundtrack.
Did he do the soundtrack?
No, it's all New York punk bands.
Oh, yeah. I've heard of them.
Yep,
all of them.
And rounding it out, number 5, The Monster Club.
Not a good movie.
That one's okay. I have a soft spot for it because that was a Creature double feature movie, and it's one of the earliest movies that I remember seeing. And there's a couple of parts to it that actually scared the shit out of me, mostly because I was 7 years old. So yeah. So here's some cast and crew. The director is a man named George Mihalka, and honestly, not much to know about this guy. He stays fairly busy since the early 80s. This was technically his first feature, but it came out after a sort of cheap...
He had made one other. Did he make a comedy too?
It was like an Animal House style sex comedy that called Pickup Summer. That's what it's called. And yeah, he stays fairly active between film and TV. And as recently as 2015, having directed parts of the Black Christmas document, Black Christmas Legacy, which I believe is the one that's on the Blu-ray. The one that we sourced all of our information for a Black Christmas episode.
Really?
I think it's the one. I'd have to go back and check. I mean, I may be mistaken, but I'm pretty sure. Like, there's not a lot of Black Christmas documentaries out there. But yeah, so here's the cast. We got Neil Affleck as Axel. He's Ben Affleck's cousin.
Is he really?
No, he's not. I made that up.
No, he's not.
No, he's a Canadian actor, stayed fairly busy with small parts throughout the 80s. And then in the mid-90s, his career takes a really wild turn when he gets into animation, eventually directing several episodes of Family Guy and The Simpsons. And he was on The Simpsons in various roles for 10 seasons, it turns out. Yeah. And he's still quite active today as an actor and a director of animation. So, yeah. The miner, by the way, is played by a different actor. That's a guy named Peter Cowper. He's a stuntman. Like most of the guys in the behind the mask were always stuntmen.
Yeah. Well, I mean, because they had to do like big. Well, first of all, they usually had to look large and imposing.
Yeah. They needed big guys who were very physical to sort of do these things.
Yeah. Yep. And I think a lot of them, because they do so much like fighting, they probably had to be accustomed to that.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's see. We also have Laurie Hollier as Sarah, and this is her first feature role. She'd been working in stage productions prior to this and led to a busy career that continues to this day. She's done a ton of 80s television. And if the production was done in Toronto, she was probably in it.
We should say the majority of this cast, I think the entire cast actually, is Canadian, and that is on purpose.
Yes.
I mean, it would have had to have been Canadian anyway. We'll get to that whole Canada Film Board thing in a minute. But
yeah, I got a whole thing about the tax shelter era.
But he wanted to... He kind of, it was a point of pride for him to make it as Canadian as possible, because it should be said, this is one of very few of horror movies in general, I think, but from that era specifically, where they don't really go out of their way to make you think you're in the United States.
No, this one kind of wears it on its sleeve.
This is very like specifically Canadian.
Yeah.
Which is, I think, one of the reasons I love
it. Yeah. It's an artifact of a very rich period for Canadian exploitation movies, Canucksploitation, I've heard them called.
Mm-hmm.
But this one in particular is one that's just like where the others try to make it kind of ambiguous, even though it's fucking obvious most of the time. Like this one's got Canadian license plates. It's all shot around Nova Scotia. There's Canadian beer prominently featured throughout it. There's an accent. Every cast member has the accent. It's pretty funny. And speaking of Canadian actors, rounding it out is Keith Knight as Hollis, who is my favorite dude in the entire movie. In a movie,
Hollis is pretty great.
Yeah, and in a movie that's about as Canadian as it gets. He is the walking embodiment of Canada. He played Fink in Meatballs. He's the fat guy who beats the stomach at the hot dog eating contest, and he also appears in a number of other Canadian exploitation.
He is Barnyard in A Class of 1984, which is a year after this, and he looks about 15 years younger in that.
I know. You know what it is? It's the mustache. The mustache is doing a lot of work in this movie. He's also in Siege.
Yes.
Yeah. Which we're going to do on 99-cent rental. I've not seen it. I'm saving it for when we do that.
It's actually a surprisingly good movie.
That's what I've been told. Yeah. And lastly, I want to mention this because he gets mentioned every now and then, like in small parts. The music was done by a guy named Paul Zaza.
Yeah.
And so, and if the movie was a low budget horror movie made in Canada, Paul Zaza is the man behind the music.
So Paul Zaza did most of Bob Clark's early movies.
Yep.
He did the Prom Night soundtrack, which is fucking awesome. The soundtrack to this is awesome.
The soundtrack to, so Porky's was the first Bob Clark movie he did. He also did A Christmas Story. Like a year prior to this, like he just said, Prom Night. He did all of the disco sound-alike stuff, not to mention all the just rather scoring stuff for Prom Night. He's really
good at writing like knockoff shit. Because if you listen to the Prom Night soundtrack, every one of those songs is going to sound really familiar, even though they are all original.
Well, yeah, it was like when I was watching it, like I think I watched it a few months ago. Like I think it was back in either September or October, and I was texting you, and I was like, this one is "I Will Survive," isn't it?
Yeah, most of it. Yeah, I love Paul Zaza. He did the soundtrack to Windows, which is really cool.
Curtains.
Yep. Yeah. He's just really great stuff.
He's a real utility musician. He's very talented. I like all of his stuff. Whenever I see his name in the credits, I'm like, yes, because it's.
And he worked a lot with what's his name? The one who did Black Christmas.
Oh shit! No, I can't. We just did that. And I can't remember.
They worked together a lot because they kind of complemented one another in terms of the type of stuff they did.
Yeah. Zaza did the music, and this other guy, I'm gonna have to look it up, but he was the soundscapes guy.
Yep.
So here's some taglines for this movie.
None of them are good.
Not really. Suck. There's a shitload of them on the IMDb taglines list.
Which most of them feel like they're real.
Most of them appear on like Mondo posters and shit. It's just like stuff that people kind of came up with recently. There's really only two that showed commonly. One of them is on every poster. And that is, there's more than one way to lose your heart.
Pretty good. I like that one.
That one's not bad. There's another one that's a poster that looks like it was fairly rare. It was probably used in international markets. And that one is, Harry's out to steal your heart.
Okay. So less good.
Yeah. And this is the last one, which is one that I found on some VHS boxes. This Valentine's Day, romance is dead.
Yeah. Speaking of VHS boxes, though, cool ass poster art. This is another one of the ones that I remember distinctly because of how cool it looks. It is a very, very simple image, but very effective.
One of my all-time favorites. I would say that this is easily like if my favorite one of all time, like the one that I consider like the most evocative, is the Friday the 13th poster.
Mm-hmm.
This one is right up there with that. Because
I'd say it's a top 5.
I was going to say top 3 very easily. It really kind of, it doesn't tell you very much about it. It gives you an idea of what the killer is going to be. There's something about the look in his eyes that they show that's very alarming. Because
the killer is cool as hell in this.
It's very cool.
Out of all these slashers, this is the Miner is the coolest looking villain in any of them. And I'm including Nightmare on Elm Street, Friday the 13th, all of them. I think the Miner is the coolest looking one because that fucking mask is terrifying.
It's
no matter
how
you wear it or where, it's still creepy as shit. And he's got a giant pickaxe.
Yep.
It's just a really awesome villain. Like, this movie is very well put together. It's very well made. It's very well thought out. It's very efficient.
Yeah. Yeah, it really is. And it was based on a single page synopsis by the executive producer, a guy named Stephen Miller. And it was originally called The Secret.
I think that's because they didn't want to give away what they were doing.
They're
essentially making, if they had said what they were, like if they had given it any kind of name that indicated the content, it would have been obvious what they were doing.
What they were trying to do is protect the holiday theme, because this was obvious. This is 1981. It's the period where everybody's got to do fucking holiday themed slasher movie. And so there's like a million of them. They wanted like this one to remain theirs so that nobody else kind of like swooped in and scooped them.
Now, to their credit, though, this one integrates the holiday better than any other one has ever done, because it is really built into the story.
Yeah, the other ones were basically, anytime there's like a movie, like a slasher movie of the period of this golden age of the slasher that had a theme, like a holiday theme, it was usually shoehorned in after the story was written.
Yeah, like even Halloween is like, well, it happens on Halloween, but that's about the extent of it. Like, it doesn't play much of a role beyond that. I guess you could argue April Fool's Day, the big twist at the end is kind of related, but otherwise it's not really necessary.
Yeah. So this movie was produced on a budget of a little over $2 million, which for these slasher movies of the period, that's a lot of money.
It does seem like a lot to me.
Because Friday the 13th was produced a year before this one on a $500,000 budget.
I'm guessing, though, there's a lot that got eaten up. Like insurance must have been a bitch on this.
Probably. Also, I know that there's weird, like, sort of like making of secrets that I kind of picked up here and there. Apparently, when the company that owned the mine found out that they were going to, hey, they're going to make a movie in our mine. It was
actually the town that owned the mine at that point.
Okay, yeah. What they did was they were like, oh shit, we don't want to look like a bunch of slobs. So they like cleaned it up and like sort of renovated it and painted it. And when the production crew got there, they were like, what the fuck have you done? We picked it because this was like so dreary and run down. So they had to spend like $100,000 like mashing it up and making it look nasty again.
And the reason they wanted to do that, so it's in what's it called, Sydney Mines, something like that.
Yeah, I've got a little thing about that.
That's the name of the town. But they were hoping that this would be like kind of help revitalize tourism. And I don't want to shit on the town. It's just a fucking seaside town. But at the same time, like, what tourism?
Yeah, like
you've got like a giant fucking factory and you've got a mine.
Yeah, eventually they turned it into a mining museum. So
basically, that was what
they
wanted to do to it, but they didn't because they already had a mining museum that was like, 20 miles away or something. So they just like had an empty mine. And what they do with mines when they stop working is they either seal them off or they fill them in with concrete.
Yeah.
And so it's like, you've got this resource. You're either going to just dump a bunch of fucking concrete into it or wall it off. So I don't know, but it just seems weird to me that they were like, we're going to, because the town itself plays a big role in this. You do see a lot of it. And it's kind of like, what are you promoting?
Yeah. You know what it is I get the feeling that this was a desperate post-industrial town where because the mine closes.
It's a straight up Bruce Springsteen song.
Yeah, it really is. The mine closes in 1975, which means there's no work there. There's no reason to really be there. It's very remote. It's very run down. It's a coal mine, so everything is like black and gray and brown. Like there's nothing there.
That is a huge. This is one of the things I think is really great about this movie is that it's one of very few slashers, I think maybe slashers in general, but of this era that is very class conscious in that the fact that these are blue collar people and sort of working class people is built into the story. It's a big part of the story.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Cause there's a whole thing.
See that in other stuff.
Fuck no.
Like, I think if you see class in other movies, it either gets ignored, which is sort of a statement in itself, or it's kind of used like working class backgrounds and working class identities are sort of used like almost to justify a killer's rampage or something like that. Like think Texas Chainsaw.
Yeah.
Where like that rural thing. And
that's a very similar setup where it's like, well, the slaughterhouse closed and like, what the fuck were we,
And so this is one that it uses it in a way that is sort of like, it's not hopeless, but it is a very sort of bleak future for everyone because if you live in this town, you work in the mine is the only industry.
Right. And especially like the real mine that this this town occupied was a company town. So,
and that's evident. And when you see the building, so for people who do not know, a company town is essentially a long time ago, companies would basically buy up a fuckload of land, build housing and general stores and everything for the employees. And it's real slimy. It's really sleazy. And the whole thing was designed to exploit your labor. But you can see it when they walk around town. There's all these little houses, and it's like this was all part of the mine. Yeah. Even if you were shopping downtown, you were shopping at a company store.
Yeah. The company store was everything that you needed, and it was right there because going elsewhere was basically impossible. Or it wasn't impossible, but it was a humongous tax or
and that was on purpose.
Yeah. So like if you want to see
a lot of what they would do too is they would sometimes in certain cases they would give their employees either a portion of their pay or sometimes all of their pay in like credits for you to go use at the company store.
Yeah.
And so it's like, that is the shittiest thing I've ever heard.
Yeah. If you want to like know more about this and sort of see what the kind of the end result of this is, do yourself a solid and search the Battle of Blair Mountain. It's a real sad story about American labor, but it'll give you an idea of
town.
Yeah. And to some extent, Centralia, Pennsylvania is another sort of story about that still remains.
It's fine. Everything's fine.
it's just the ground's on fire.
You can't live there, but it's fine.
Yeah. So back to what I was saying. So this movie, it produced on a budget of over $2 million. Movie ends with an obvious opening for a sequel that never comes, having to do with the movie's weak return at the box office.
Well, so I think that's probably the real reason. So Mihalka says that a lot of it is due to sort of the hubbub with the MPAA, which I mean, both
I guarantee his experience and Paramount's experience by extension with the MPAA in this instance was probably enough to make them be like, I don't know if we want to do a slasher movie again.
That's probably the other thing worth noting up at the top is that if this movie is memorable for anything, it is probably that. I don't want to say controversy because it's not a controversy.
No, not really.
But this movie was extremely
it's
gory when it came out, and it is still extremely gory. There are scenes that are pretty gnarly in this. Also, originally, Cinepix is who put this out.
Yeah.
Cinepix is now Lionsgate.
Yeah.
But they were like sort of the bigger Canadian. How were they? They're not a studio. It's like a distributor, I guess.
Distributor. Yeah.
They weren't a production company. There's something in between, I guess.
They were like, if you could have a company that was nothing but executive producers. It was people who paid for movies to be made but didn't like involve themselves in the infrastructure. Right. So if you're like an independent film production, you basically, you would get the money through them. They would sort of oversee the production, but the actual production and the people involved in the production was kind of up to you and your producers.
Yep.
So yeah,
I mean, they did all of David Cronenberg's early movies done through them. But so this is I guess a good point to, because we've alluded to or referenced in the past why so many of these movies were made in Canada.
Yeah, actually, put a pin in that because I just want to get through this last note here because this was, like we said, it was distributed by Paramount, which is the same studio that released Friday the 13th, and they placed this movie in as many theaters as Friday the 13th, so they had this like model for it, which is somewhere around 1,200 movie theaters. And so where Friday, which was a movie made on a quarter of this movie's budget, returned 10 times the box office of this one. So when this one came out and kind of fell flat, they were like, well, shit, this was such a pain in the ass to put together. And the return was so weak, like, I guess we're kind of done with this for now. But to your note about the whole the Canadian sort of film industry, go.
Well, so I don't know a lot about it. I know a little bit about it. So there were obviously a shitload of movies that were made in Canada at the time. And a lot of people refer to it as like the tax break era. And that is kind of what it was.
Well, yes, because specifically prior to 1975, the deduction amount varied from year to year. But in 1974, film investors were allowed to deduct 60% of their investment of a film as taxable income. And then in 75, and this ends in 1982, they increased that number to 100%. So you could invest a sum of money into a film produced in Canada, and then you could deduct all of that investment from your taxable income. So what would end up happening is you could just back these trashy exploitation movies, deduct your entire investment from your taxes, and then get that money back, as well as however much the movie made. So like,
and that does come with certain conditions too. I mean,
sure,
you had to use like, I think 60%, 70% of your cast and crew had to be Canadian.
Yeah. Which is pretty standard. That's how it works in Italy also. Yep. At the same time.
And so it gets a little bit more complicated though, because the Canadian Film Board, essentially, I can't remember their full title. Canadian Film,
I believe it was the CFB.
Corporation. Canadian Film Development Corporation is what they were called. And they were just dumping money into promoting this type of thing. And what's interesting about all of this is that and I'm sure there was a lot of corruption involved. You know, anytime there's lots of money changing hands, there's going to be corruption. But what I think is really interesting is that people got pissy about it because, of course, they're making lots of low budget movies, exploitation and horror movies. And so there was a lot of like, do you want your tax dollars going to this type, a lot of moralizing.
Yeah.
And what I really like is there was a quote, and I should have written the fucking quote down, but it's from the guy who took over right around the time this tax thing went into effect. And he was basically like, hey, everybody, fuck you. We just want people to make Canadian movies. I don't care if they're making horror. They can make whatever they want. I want them to make movies in Canada. I want Canadian filmmakers to make movies in Canada. Because what they were really shooting for, and they kind of had been shooting for this for a long time, was to make the big crossover hit, the big Canadian movie that did well in American markets. And that was what Black Christmas was supposed to be.
Yeah.
And it kind of wasn't. And neither was this. But really, I do think there's something... There's something to be said for someone who's just like, it's not for me to say whether what they're making is good or not. I don't care. They're not making it for me. They're making movies. And I think there is still an element of that exists in Canada today, because they do still have not this type of thing, but they do still have laws in that support the arts in Canada.
Sure, so you can apply very easily for a grant from the government to make a movie, and they'll give you a significant amount of money to make.
Ireland does the same thing, but they also do shit like with property developments and new construction. Mm-hmm. They have I think they refer to it as like a 1% thing, where like if it's over a certain size or over a certain budget, 1% of that has to go into funding the arts as well. So it's like there is, as much as I'm sure there was a lot of corruption in all of this, there is a part of it that I think is genuine and really, really admirable, that it's like, we just want to inspire new, because this is around the same time as like New Hollywood, like that whole, getting all these people coming back from war. I think there's just there's really something to be said for that I as much as it's like, no, they're cranking out really schlocky shit. Sure, I don't give a fuck what they're cranking out though. Like, that's not the point. The point is they're promoting Canadian film.
Yeah.
The U.S. has never done anything like that. They didn't have to.
Oh, yeah. No, that's antithetical to our entire sort of economic philosophy here. But its thing is, it didn't end after the tax break sort of changed, because they kicked it back to 50% in 82. But there was still
more reasonable.
Yeah, there's still a thriving Canadian film industry, like well into the 90s, I mean, it's still today, but like not quite on the scale that it was.
I think it's a little bit different. Like, you get a lot of like Hallmark and stuff like that.
Sure. Yeah. But
a lot of television.
But also to that point about people being kind of pissy, there was some bitterness because American film producers could go there and sort of take advantage of this situation as long as they crewed their movies with Canadian crew and like actors.
And this was at a time too when you didn't need a passport to go back and forth.
Correct.
So if you're in Los Angeles, you can pretty easily just, sort of shoot people up to Vancouver.
Yeah.
And you're there.
And then the thing was, like, Hollywood itself didn't really necessarily need to take care. They had their own infrastructure. They had their own sort of like financial loop. It was mostly the indies. And so at this time, like when this movie comes out, like there was a shitload of slasher movies being produced primarily in New York and New Jersey, which all of a sudden, that's just a real quick trip north, where all of a sudden, like, you've got investors lining up to just throw money at your production. So
especially once you start to see things like Prom Night that are pretty profitable, because Prom Night is shot in Hamilton, Canada.
Yep.
And so I think once people started to see that, they were like, well, we can get our fucking money back and get whatever profits come out of this. If none come out of it, who cares? We got our money back.
Yeah.
But I think something interesting is related to that, and sort of tied to that, moral panic about horror movies, is I'm going to hit you with a review from one Mr. Gene Siskel.
Oh, great.
This is from his My Bloody Valentine review. It says, a great many films have been made in Canada, but a lot of schlock thrillers have also been made there. And I wonder if the citizens of Canada know that their tax money is in effect paying for such dismal and depressing horror films. Now, before you react, I'm going to say something, because I hear a lot of people being like, well, Gene Siskel and Roger Ebert, they were really good writers, really good critics. I don't think they were, actually. I think if you're going to say shit like this, you're not being objective at all. And the whole fucking point of being a critic is to try some objectivity. I think around this time, because they are obviously the big fucking opponents of horror, I really think that they had positioned themselves as sort of cultural gatekeepers when it came to film.
Yeah.
And they really, really leveraged this position and this sort of anti-horror, moral outrage bullshit in order to strengthen their position as gatekeepers. So there's something so fucking disingenuous to this. Now, I'm reacting this way because I am a big fan of horror, but also I just find this shit really, really objectionable. To just be like, how dare they? It's like, you didn't even fucking watch the movie. Why don't you shut up?
Yeah, there are numerous movies that I've seen Roger Ebert write up where he's like, I left this movie halfway through. And it's like, well, how the fuck can you write a review of it, man?
Yeah.
It's like, I mean, I get it. Like, the thing is, they're not the only people like reviewing movies and reviewing horror movies poorly. Like Leonard Maltin was kind of bitter about this sort of shit. And there's like,
yeah, but I have a lot more respect for Leonard Maltin than I do for these fucking guys.
Yeah, but like, I mean, even like Vincent Canby would review these horror movies every now and then.
But Vincent Canby and who's the one from New York Times? The woman,
Pauline.
Yeah, Pauline
Kael.
Same thing. Vincent Canby, Pauline Kael, they were of an older generation.
Yeah.
And so, I do sympathize with a lot of people, particularly these kinds of people where it's like, well, this is not the horror that you really grew up with. So to you, this probably is really offensive. Whereas for us, this is exactly the horror we grew up with. But I can watch shit today and be like, you know what? This movie sucks, but I think it sucks because this movie is not made for me.
Yeah.
So I can watch something like,
that was like when we did that roundup for the 2023 movies. There was a bunch of them that we just didn't like, but like we very, very freely admitted that it was like, this movie was not made with us in mind.
Right. And whereas I can look at something like that and say, there is craftsmanship here. I may not like the story or it might not resonate with me, but I can see what they're going for. And I'm sure for people that age or whoever the audience is, they probably really like it. The problem is these are white men in their 30s in 1980 or whatever. So they think everything is for them. And when something doesn't resonate with them, it must be because it's fucking terrible.
Yeah. Yeah.
Fuck off. That is such a bullshit perspective.
Like my whole thing with Canby and Kael is that they reviewed this stuff. And they reviewed it poorly, but their reviews were really more like an eye roll in writing. You know,
they're not quite. It's not like Rex Reed.
Yeah, but
it's just kind of like a sassy asshole about everything.
Yeah. So
I'm derailing us here, but it is to say that this comes at a time. This is sort of the end, and this is another thing I think is kind of wild to think about. Is that we think like, oh, the 80s was all about slashers. It's like, well, no, not quite.
No, the golden age of the slasher movie is like
to 1982 is all about slashers.
Yeah.
The rest of the 80s is just about other stuff.
And honestly, I think saying 78 is giving it is sort of.
I mean, it's really
being a little generous because it's really 80 to 82 when things kind of go nuts. Because like Halloween lit the fuse, but Friday the 13th was the explosion, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And that's just so wild to me to like. So, I mean, yeah, they're getting flooded with all this, and this one is coming at the end. So it's really easy to attack shit like this and be like, great, here's another one. But you know what? Your fucking job is to review movies, which is an extreme privilege. So why don't you sit down, watch the goddamn movie that you're getting paid to talk about, then write objectively, which they clearly could not do because they found nothing redeeming about any of these movies. And it's because they didn't want to.
No.
Which is so fucking childish.
It's
I can't believe you have been given this job when you seem incapable of doing it.
I know, for real. Like, if I could do this for a living, could you fucking imagine?
And I mean, like, I get it. I have a job that people would be like, oh man, that must be the greatest job in the world. It's like, yeah, it's still a fucking job though.
Yeah.
Like, it's still like, it sounds great. But like, you know, if you can't sit down and be like, well, this is not going to be for me, but I'm going to see what they're doing. Because the whole thing about reviews, and this is why I don't say that we do reviews, and I'm not a critic, is because these cultural criticism is a thing. It is an actual thing that people are good at and trained to do. And one of the things you do is you're supposed to look at it and say, what is this person trying to do with this movie, and are they doing it?
Yeah.
That's really the core of cultural criticism. That's where you start from, not just like, oh great, another slasher movie. Well, sorry, pick a different fucking movie then, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah.
Anyway, I've derailed us, but I find a lot of this really distasteful.
Yeah. So let's keep that outrage going. Let's give it a little momentum because I want to talk about the censorship in this movie a little bit too.
Oh, right.
So usually when a movie goes to the MPAA for certification, there's a process of bargaining that goes back and forth between the studio and the association, and seconds get shaved off the movie here and there when the MPAA sends back.
So not 10 minutes.
No.
Not whole scenes.
No, what they'll do is they'll be like, you got to lose 8 frames here, 10 frames here. In case you are unfamiliar with frame rate, with film, 24 frames equal 1 second. And so when they say like you need to lose like 10 frames here, they're chopping half a second of the thing off.
And it's usually like, a side boob here, a thrust there.
Little things like, oh, we can't see that much blood, which is why like Evil Dead goes and gives you a little bit of red blood, but then it turns like black and green and shit like that.
But a lot of this shit is also really arbitrary, and it's guided by weird shit. I mean, there's a documentary about this that came out, I don't know, probably 15 years ago or so.
Yeah.
It's called Rated X.
Yep.
Something like that.
Or not, this film is not yet rated?
That's what it was. Yeah. But a lot of this shit is like it's essentially tied to public morality, because what the MPAA comes out of is it's a compromise in order to get rid of the Hays Code.
Yeah.
And so it's basically like, okay, but you have to police yourselves then.
Yeah. And so even though it is
tied to public morality. So it's like you can see full frontal nudity for women, but not men. Why? Well, because that's just fucking gay.
Yeah. So
because who do you think is making these choices?
Yeah. Because and the thing is they often are arbitrary. They are usually left up to sort of subjective reactions to scenes, but the compromise is like, you can do this, but you can do it for like this many seconds, and it's like trim a little here, trim a little there. A movie loses 1 or 2 minutes. Like if you've ever gotten a DVD or Blu-ray or whatever, and you're watching the deleted scenes and you realize like this deleted scene lasts like 4 seconds or something like that. So a notorious,
I was serious when I said, a thrust here or there, because some of it really comes down to, well, you can see him, thrust his hips 3 times, but not 4.
Yeah. We talk about that in the Hellraiser episode a bit, where that was very much an objection.
And that actually is a big issue in this movie as well.
Yeah. So there's let's take a notorious bloodbath, for example, RoboCop. RoboCop had
hell of a movie.
Fucking love it. RoboCop had 3 minutes cut from that movie in order to get an R rating. My Bloody Valentine lost 9 minutes.
9 minutes. And whole scenes. Like a whole scene had to be cut and reshot.
Yeah. So the original theatrical cut of this movie is very, very tame because of this. And I think that until the 90s, when I kind of caught up with a very particular bootleg of the movie, I really did not care for this movie. Like I thought it was mostly just bland.
Because this movie is, and we will get into it, this is a melodrama in a lot of ways. This is sort of a kitchen sink melodrama in certain ways, because it is a relationship-based film, which is, I think, one of the reasons it really sets it apart. It just happens to be a relationship film that is intercut with some fucking gnarly gore.
Yeah. So the uncut version of the movie remained unseen until 2008 or 2009. It's whenever the remake came out.
It's 2008. Did you have the original? So when the remake came out, have you ever seen the remake?
No.
I've put it on. I've never made it through. It's supposedly decent, but I've just never gotten to it. It has Tom Atkins in it.
Yeah. Was it Jensen Ackles?
The guy from Supernatural, but Tom Atkins is the sheriff, I think.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah.
So whenever that came out, Lionsgate put out the original or the first DVD release, and I had that one. And that one they cut the scenes. I'm pretty sure they cut them back into the movie. So certain scenes got cut back into the movie. They didn't do much though to clean it up. So it's like that. It's that situation where you're like, oh, this looks like it was pulled from VHS and just dropped back into the movie, and so it kind of looks like shit.
Yeah, in the 4K, like there are certain scenes where like the color timing is way different than like,
and that's
the
because they're
surrounding
pulling
footage.
it from whatever. It's not an interpositive, and it's definitely not camera negative.
No.
So some of these are like, a work print they found kicking around.
I would bet that so somewhere in the mid 90s is when I'm trading videos pretty heavily. I got a tape through Video Wasteland, which was like a mail order rental company. It was basically Netflix for horror movies, but like way before there was ever a Netflix. And they advertised that they just got it. It was very exciting, and it was a bootleg of the movie that was sourced from a factory pre-record, which is one of the tapes that's intended for rental. So it's a first generation tape, but somebody took a Japanese Laserdisc, which was the movie that we know today, and
most of,
and spliced those scenes that had been cut from the theatrical cut here back into it, and so
which must have looked like shit.
It was very jarring because also I think that
you can't cut a VHS like that.
No. And it was janky as hell. And also you could tell that like the source footage of all of this sort of excised violence probably came from like a second or third generation tape because it was a little blurry and shit, But like it was the first time anybody had really ever seen it. And I think I can't remember who released it. It was either Video Search of Miami or it was Revic Film Prodigies. But yeah,
Video Search of Miami.
I know. I was thinking about them today. It looks like they have been scrubbed from the internet completely. Like I'd like to see if I could find information about them.
They had a lot. This was a long time ago. I was writing a lot about not pornography, but like gay indie movies that were very sort of on the edge. They were kind of pornographic.
Yeah.
And I found a lot of stuff through them because they would just have this weird catalog that it must have been like the Wikipedia of fucking VHS.
It was a massive catalog, and it was so great because I ordered them because the thing was you had to request the catalog, and it came, and it was like a really thick book, and all of their movie listings were like little tiny. Like small fine print lettering.
It's like the fucking Sears Christmas toy catalog.
Yeah, it was,
but for weirdos and perverts.
Yeah, it was gigantic. It was all trashy, charming garbage. A lot of stuff that ended up on Mystery Science Theater. But like I in order to order from them,
something weird.
Yeah, or something weird. But in order to order from them, you first had to, at least when I bought tapes from them, you first had to pay them a membership fee. And I think it was a way that they kind of, up until they changed the laws, it was a way that they sort of excluded themselves from being like essentially selling bootleg tapes to being
and they don't want to get fucking dragged into court for being accused for like selling snuff movies, which was a very real fear at the time.
Yeah. But like, I think it made them a film club or something like that. And
nice.
I ordered stuff like they had that 5-hour work print of This Is Spinal Tap that I got, and I think that was the sort of thing that eventually gets them in trouble because you cannot find them anywhere. There's photos of their catalogs, which are a lot of fun. You can find them online. But yeah, I wish I could talk to the people who were actually behind that because it's a very fascinating organization. But yeah, that's
so the 2008 one. That's the Lionsgate one that they put out, and it's a bunch of the shit that's on the newer Blu-rays. The bonus features comes from that era.
Yeah,
and then I think it's 2018 is my guess, around when Shout Factory puts it out. And Shout Factory, despite what they've sort of become, I have a lot of criticisms, but they did put a lot of effort into really lovingly restoring this movie, because the stuff that they cut back in, the gore they cut back in, is actually, it looks pretty good. There are moments where you're like, that whatever source material you have is a little bit rough, but I think they do a really good job with it.
Yeah.
And so you get 5 more minutes of it, but it is some really, really hard stuff.
Some of it's really, really hardcore.
The effects in this movie are so good.
They're wicked good.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, and I got some notes about the outfit that did it. But back to the MPAA thing. Jack Valenti, who is the president of the MPAA,
and a giant asshole,
humongous dick, was so offended by this one that he sent a letter back to Paramount that said, "Tell those Canadians to take their movie and go home."
Wow.
Yeah.
Hey, Jack Valenti, you and Gene Siskel can eat a whole bag of dicks.
Whole bag of dicks. And I'll bring along some for everybody.
This is more of that gatekeeping of like, we get to decide what culture is. We get to decide what art is. And it's like, fuck all of you.
I am sure that when you put a group of people like that in front of, theatrical distribution, because like it really was kind of a kiss of death to get an X rating or to opt not to have your movies rated, because then you couldn't really advertise them. Newspapers wouldn't publish that stuff.
And studios or theaters wouldn't pick them up. Theaters would not run with movies that were either X-rated or unrated.
Yeah.
Because it just wasn't, they couldn't market it. They couldn't book it. So they wouldn't do it.
Yep. God damn. Unless it was in the city, but yeah.
Even then though, like it was such a big, and because the way that the studios for a long time owned theater chains.
Yeah.
So that's why a lot of that shit worked. And then even then, like they still had tons of influence because they'd be like, well, we'll give you a break on this one if you take this one, but no one's going to be like, I guess, but it's X-rated, so who's going to come see it?
Yeah.
Unless it's the 70s for a little while and people are all rushing to the theater. To
everybody was everybody was going to porno movies on date night and shit. That sounds crazy.
Did I ever tell you the story about when the time I was working? It was four of us working in the bakery, and we were talking about. I think we're talking about porn, like when it had come out in the theater. And
Behind Mom was the green door.
And Mom was like, "Oh yeah, we went to see that when it was in the theater." And I was like,
"Shut up!
What? Gasp!
I have never heard this story."
Yep. And I was like, "Well, you know what? That sounds like a story I don't want to hear." So I'm going to put on Prince, and we're just going to get back to work.
Going to put my fingers in my ears here. That's a nightmare.
Yeah, it was a really weird moment.
Yeah. So let's see. George Mihalka credits Black Christmas as being a major influence on him when he made this movie, which is nice.
I think you can see it.
Yeah, you can see it. This was also
we should also say too that this is a movie. One of the things they were trying to do with this is historically there has been a perception of horror that it is a genre for young white men, and that is who it's been marketed to. That is actually not true. It is not a genre for young white men, and it has also not historically been marketed to them.
That's true. If our demographics are anything to hold that up to, that is definitely not true.
And I mean, I think that's a perception that goes across the board. That's why people are like, queer horror, what? And that is a very new concept, but that speaks to the reality that like we were always here, you just didn't give a shit.
Yeah, and that's like the same thing. Kind of is weird that everything kind of gets. All the mainstream stuff kind of gets thrown at the bros, but like,
but it goes back to that Gene Siskel thing of like, oh, you just thought that everything was for you, and you're shocked to find out that it's not.
Yeah.
And so this is one of those movies where they were really trying to sort of lure, or appeal to, I shouldn't say lure, but appeal to
trying to groom children.
Yeah. They're trying to appeal to younger women. And that is why you get a lot. I mean, when we get to the plot, we can talk about it, but that's why you get this sort of real heavy romantic storyline in this movie, because they are trying to appeal to, younger women who want to go to dates to see the movie. So
also, I would say
one of the stronger examples of that.
Yeah, I would say that speaking to that also, like Sarah is a pretty. There's not really a final girl in this movie, but as a kind of woman of action, she's definitely one of the stronger ones.
It's complicated because there are moments where she is, and then there are other moments where it's like, because the gender politics and the sexual politics of this movie are one of the things that unfortunately do not age very well. No. And yet at times they kind of do in a very interesting way. So I think that's another thing to really point out. That's one of the things I think makes this stand above the others, in that they really do go out of their way, not just to build out the characters and the environment, but to sort of build out personalities and to make them feel real.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But getting back to your comments there about the sort of class consciousness of this movie, Mihalka also intended this movie to be the Deer Hunter of horror films.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did he see Deer Hunter? Does he know what that's about?
I don't know. But like it's got the same kind of vibe,
Well, I mean, I guess I can sort of see it because there is a hopelessness to this movie in terms of like what people have ahead of them.
It's a real hard portrait of kind of like blue collar, like a day in the life of like,
well, that's what I mean. It's like
people.
there's an idea, like, you know, Deer Hunter, a lot of the themes of that are like, again, that Bruce Springsteen thing of like, you came back from the war and there's nothing here for you, and yet this is going to be the rest of your life.
Yeah,
there's a very similar vibe to this movie in that, like, you work here, this is your life, whether you like it or not, so make the best of it.
Yeah, because there is this weird subplot that goes through this about like when TJ went out to the West Coast to like try to escape this, and he kind of ends up back here, and it's never resolved. And some of the extras on that Scream Factory Blu-ray, there's several interviews with basically a bunch of people involved in this, and each one of them gets asked the same questions. And one of the questions is,
I thought those interviews were so fucking weird.
Some of them were really interesting.
Because
some of them
first
were
of all,
weird
why
as hell.
is the person doing the interviewing not on the actual recording?
Yeah. Yeah.
And then, but they ask them the same questions too.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. Maybe they had a weird voice or something like that. And they were like, oh, we can't have this person speaking on the audio track. It was like a 15-year-old or something like that.
It's Grover.
It's Bobcat Goldthwait in the 80s.
Or that kid from You Can't Do That on Television who he's the man of 1,000 voices, except they all sound like Bobcat Goldthwait.
Yeah, that would make sense since we're in Canada.
Fucking greatest bit ever.
Yeah. So, like we said, remade in 2009. Apparently, it was remade in 3D.
Yeah, because this is so it's not just during the big remake enthusiasm, which, like, I think that's the worst era of horror ever. It's also,
I really feel for people who like that's the era of horror that they're nostalgic for, is like when not only did we have nothing but remakes of much better movies, it also everything had to be in fucking 3D.
Yeah. I think I have previously referred to that as if an era of horror could be a piece of clothing, it would be a fedora.
it would be low-rise jeans with fringe.
Yeah, it would be a soul patch, is what that would be.
It would be a lit t-shirt. Yeah. So shall we get into it?
I mean, it's been 7 hours. I may as well.
So we open on two people in mining gear, right down to the masks and breathing apparatus.
We open on the most canted of angles.
Yeah. And upon reaching a suitably secluded spot, one of them undresses, revealing that she's a sexy lady with a heart tattoo over her actual heart under all that mining equipment.
I think this scene is weird because this is the only scene in this movie that feels like an afterthought, and it feels like maybe someone at Paramount, or could have been anyone, but it has that feeling of like, no, you have to make it sexy though. Like if you're seen Friday the 13th, put that in there.
Yeah.
Because this is unconnected to anything. It doesn't feel like it fits at all.
It is. This is the precursor to the very first heart that appears.
I guess so, but you could have done that another way. This feels like they jammed it in at the end because it has an exploitive, sort of oversexed quality to it that does not exist throughout the rest of the movie.
Yeah, because this movie is remarkably not sexy.
It's not really. No. Even in the scenes that are supposed to be, they are not.
Yeah. But so the sexy lady there suggestively strokes the breathing hose of her companion, who then pushes her onto the spike of a nearby pickaxe. The sexy lady screams, and we cut to the title card.
And you also you see the whatever spike is, you see it rip through her chest.
Yes, that's a cool fucking effect because it's not
all
like
the effects in this movie are so cool.
It's not like it's not the sort of thing where like it looks like they built a fake body or something like that. Like it's weird. It looks like as though it is piercing her chest. It's pretty cool. So then we cut to Thursday the 12th. Get it?
You get it, everybody.
You get it, everybody. Yeah. So the boys are
nudge.
Yeah. So the boys are done with their shift at the mine, and they're.
Being a miner looks fucking terrible.
Unbelievably terrifying. Because like later on, we're going to actually see them working in the mine, and they're all like fucking hunched over and shit.
I mean, in terms of environmental storytelling, it's cool as shit. It's really fucking awesome. It is a unique environment for horror. It's a unique environment pretty much for anything. And it's really awesome. But goddamn, does this look like a hard life?
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, they're all they're done with their shift. They're coming back up to the surface, all dressed in
And
the
if you're
gear.
not sure where this takes place, just wait until someone opens their mouth.
Yeah. They head off to the showers to clean up, and it's just dozens of naked dudes playing.
Yeah, it is lots of real sexy horseplay.
Dude playing grab ass with each other,
snapping towels and talking about each other's dicks.
Yeah, apparently, so the entire scene, because, it's a movie in the 80s, is shot from, like, the waist up, but apparently everybody was fucking nude.
You got to get that authenticity. It's also, like, 30-degree water, and they're just pumping smoke in to make it look like steam.
Oh, good God, man. Could they not afford hot water?
I mean, we grew up on the seacoast. That's essentially what this is. This is Cape Breton, in September.
Yeah.
And in a mine that is now defunct and ready to close down.
It's got to be cold as fuck underground, too, because there's parts a little later on when they're running around underground.
Yeah, they're like 2,000 feet underground.
Which is a long way.
It takes 15 minutes to get down to, what do they call it? Something like the mass drill head or something?
Oh, I can't remember what they call it, but... But yeah, so it's gonna be a hot time on Saturday night.
Hot time on Saturday night. Just talking about dicks.
Just a whole bunch of dudes just excited for Valentine's Day, eh?
Oh man, so good.
Yeah. So we learned two things. A dude named TJ has been away for a while, doing God knows what, but he's back now.
And he seems like a real asshole.
Yeah, and his old sweetheart Sarah is dating a dude named Axel.
Now, who also seems like a real asshole.
Both of them just jerks.
Sarah has terrible taste in men.
She's got a type. Let's just say she's got a type. Doing part of the research process, I always go to see what the trivia on the IMDb page for any given movie is. This page has something like 50 facts about like trivia facts about it, and like 35 of them are like mining facts.
Okay, I like to learn stuff about
about this particular mine.
I know all kinds of weird shit because of movies.
I learned a lot about mining in this movie. So everybody is now cleaned up. They haul ass back into town for brewskis.
Now, we should say, and I don't know who it is. I have an idea of who it is. So in this scene, and I'm pretty sure they shot this particular part. This is sort of shot towards the end of production. So when they're all pulling out, these are stunt drivers who are driving as they pull out of the mine for, union reasons, I guess. But one of them, I think it's the guy who plays TJ, was like, no, I'm totally cool. I can drive. I can do this part. And, drives out along with them. And I think he hit somebody.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
Yeah. They don't say who it is. Like George Mahalka makes a lot of references to it. I read an interview, a pretty lengthy interview with him, and he references it, but he won't say who it is. But was it just like... Was
it the banjo player?
No. It's wait, did he hit the banjo player? Because there's some real folksy music.
There's a real band. This all takes place to a real rollicking banjo jam.
Yeah. The fucking soundtrack to this is awesome.
It is really great.
Beginning to end.
Yeah.
Waxwork put it out. If you got a record player, get this soundtrack because it rules.
Yeah. And so we learned that this movie takes place in Valentine Bluff.
Mm-hmm. The little town with a big heart.
So this movie was shot around the Sydney mines in Nova Scotia due to its dreary industrial life.
The town is called Sydney Mines.
Yeah, that's what I said. It's called Sydney Mines.
Yeah. What I like about this part is, so they all get out of work and they go downtown to do whatever they do. They go to the bar. What I like about the core group of this, and it was what really resonates, and this I think is tied to the sort of working class aspects of it, is what it resonates with me is like this was essentially me and my life in the 20s, in my 20s, not the 20s. In that, me and all my friends worked in retail or restaurants. I mean, a few of them had like professional jobs. I did not. I worked in retail. But everybody would get out of work. You'd either go to the bar and get hammered until the bar closed, or you go to someone's apartment and there would, people are either getting drunk or you getting high or
huffing
whatever.
gas.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of them are shooting whatever, but it was very familiar to me. Like, oh, this is just life in a small town. Like before I moved to Massachusetts, like that was kind of my life. Was like we all just hung out. We'd work our shit jobs during the day. And we all worked near each other. So it kind of had, it's like we didn't work together, but we worked kind of together because it's not a big place. And then we just go out. And I think that's one of the things about this movie, like Black Christmas, where you really feel like these characters are very real to you. This, I think, resonates because these people do feel very real. They feel like just people you know. Like this was your life if you lived in a small place.
Yeah. You know what it is? What it is it's a portrait of isolation. And
just in general, like if this is your life and you feel like you're never going to get out, like this is like you try to sort of make the best of it. And that's why, like in this movie, because I think if you look at it objectively, you're like, why are they all so fucking excited about a Valentine's Day dance? It's like
there's not much else going on.
Because what else are you going to do?
Yeah.
Because if you look at it from that perspective, it's like, oh shit, it's either this or I kill myself.
Yeah. Because I used to have the same thing where I was like, why is everybody so fucking excited about Valentine's Day here? And then eventually I had a little bit of perspective and was like, oh, it's because there's not really anything else to do. Because
they work in a goddamn mine. You know, Moosehead beer on a fucking Saturday night is the best they've got. So you make that to be the greatest thing ever. And that really resonates with me because it's like, I fucking hated living in New Hampshire. I lived there because that's where I grew up. And I thought, well, I guess this is just kind of the way it's always going to be for me. Make the best of it. Now, the best of it was alcoholism and bad choices. And that's kind of what they're doing. And so it's like, it speaks to that idea of like, you know, TJ is a giant failure or feels like a giant failure because he was like, fuck it, I'm out of here. I'm going to, you know, make something of myself. And he ends up coming back. And so like, that's why they're all so excited about this goddamn dance.
Yeah. Yeah.
At, you know, the Odd Fellows Hall or whatever.
Yeah. The Union Hall. So
the Odd Fellows still a thing. Can I join the Odd Fellows?
You can join the Odd Fellows.
I think of myself as an Odd Fellow.
Yeah. Yeah. You can join the Freemasons. We can, you know, join the Elks Lodge.
No, I don't know if they have a place for me. But I mean, my note says these people friggin' love Valentine's Day.
They're so into it. Yeah. So all the dudes come pouring into the local town hall. Each one of them pulling off a bottles of Moosehead Lager, which might be an even more Canadian beer than Molson.
Hey, fun fact about Moosehead Lager. It is the last and only brewery in Canada still owned by Canadians.
That's awesome.
I mean, I think large scale. I'm sure there are tons and tons of craft.
Oh, I'm sure because it's, you know, it's the thing. But there they find all their sweethearts decorating the hall for the big Valentine's Day dance.
It is real. It's some real 1950s shit too, because each one, there's a lady for every man.
Yep. Except for TJ, who doesn't have a date.
And Howard.
And Howard, the movie's stand-in for the prerequisite slasher movie Joker.
Because Howard starts to sexually harass that lady.
Gretchen.
She's not having it. Yeah, she's
none of it.
Suck it in and zip it up, will you? I don't know why I love that, though.
Yeah.
Also, Howard's hat says, love those hookers.
Yep. He says, hey, Gretchen, you know it'd look good on you. Me. Yeah.
Suck it in and zip it up, will you?
So outside, Mayor Hanniger is complimenting a lady named Mabel for her decoration committee's.
You might notice that Mayor Hanniger and Mabel are standing outside of OK Ladies Wear.
It's just okay.
How are the clothes here? Are they great? No, they're just okay.
They're okay.
Just okay, ladies wear.
Yeah, it's doing wonders for the town since they haven't had a Valentine's Day dance in 20 years. Why in 20 years?
I wonder what could have happened.
Yep, it's a mystery for now, but there's all that other business that they need to play dumb about. But suddenly, Howard comes stumbling out into the street with a terrible bloody head wound. But you know, it's all just a joke.
Yeah. I mean, this is real. What's that fucking, the asshole in the first Friday the 13th?
Yeah.
He's that one.
He's that guy, yeah.
The guy who keeps making all the jokes.
Yep, annoying. He lives way too far into the movie.
What I will say, though, is that, these are all very kind of stereotypical, very heteronormative relationships. There is obvious affection between the men and the women in the movie.
Yeah.
And that's another thing I think that sets it apart. And again, that is that attempt to kind of lure, capture, abduct female audiences. It's that idea of like, these are natural relationships. These people feel like they feel real. They're not just like in Friday the 13th where everything is just a prelude to sex.
Yeah.
It's affection, for the sake of affection.
Oh yeah, sure. Even the couples that hook up, like it takes a while for that to happen. It happens really late into the movie, but leading up to that, even though they're like they're mostly unnamed characters, there are still these like character beats and these moments that it's like, okay, these people have like a relationship.
Yeah.
And it feels natural because you see it in action. Whereas in, like other like sort of less skillfully crafted horror movies, they're just kind of smashed together like fucking Barbie dolls.
Right. So, I mean, it's not Black Christmas to the point where like we get all the information we need to know about these people, but it is it's not shallow either.
Yeah.
These feel like authentic people.
Yeah. So there's some
drinking Moosehead beer,
Moosehead Lager all the way through, man. They must have paid for that. So,
I'm going to go to Moosehead Brewery.
So there's some complaining inside about lazy young people. We learn that TJ's got a bit of a chip on his shoulder for mysterious reasons. He's just an angry young man who went out to the West Coast to do something.
So Paul Kellman, who plays TJ in one of the interviews with him, he says that TJ went to university and failed within the first year, and that's why he came back. And now that implies that if he failed in the first year, assuming he goes when most people go to college, that would make these people like 18 or 19.
Yeah, and they clearly are not. These are like mid-20s.
Yeah. I mean, Hollis will play a high school student convincingly a year later, but
yeah.
For now, he's 36.
Yeah. But he's back, and he's also the mayor's son who put him to work in the mine. But you see...
Yeah, the mayor owns the mine.
Yeah. You see,
there's a big problem there.
It's troubling.
I think I know why everything feels so bleak in this town.
Yeah. So now he's going to leave to go grab another beer, have a good nose pick.
Why does he say? What a weird thing to say.
That is a weird thing to say. But yeah. Now Mabel has to leave too. She has to wash these decorations that got red paint on them from Howard's bloody head gag. And you see, he's real sorry about it.
Yeah. Oh, I'm real sorry.
Yeah. Also, I did a little research on that accent. It's called the Canadian raising. It has to do with the way
it's Celtic. It's Celtic. Everybody. Yeah, the way if you ever wonder where it comes from, that's where it comes.
It has something to do with the way that you sort of like you shape the diphthongs, which is like two vowels together with your tongue, and so that's it. So the Canadian raising is why you get a boot and a
it's
boat.
Not a boot. Everybody says a boot.
It's a boat. It's a boot.
It's a boat.
A boat. Yeah.
BOAT, a boat.
Yeah.
One time.
Well, everybody says it's the boot because of South Park.
One of my favorite moments in my dating history was when Michael will send like Siri texts, like audio text, voice text, and the one that I got was something. It was like something a boat. Hilarious.
That's awesome. Is he Canadian?
Your Canadian heritage is hilarious.
Yeah. So yeah, this town is obsessed with Valentine's Day. Even the radio station is in on it, having call letters QPID. But you see, also someone left a very special Valentine for the mayor, but nobody knows who. Now the mayor thinks that it's candy, as one does. But when
look, I am a middle-aged man who loves candy, and I get why he digs into this thing. Like it is fucking Christmas.
I'm gonna tell you what, I fucking hate Valentine's Day candy. The mystery chocolate pisses me off.
Well, he gets mystery chocolate.
Yeah, it's not mystery,
except it's a human heart.
It's a human heart. Yep.
Wouldn't that heart smell bad? Wouldn't you notice that this is a human heart? This is not a box of chocolate.
Probably, but also it's super bloody. So like later on, there's going to be a bloody box that's like all the dogs are like nibbling at and shit.
Yeah, that seems rough.
Yeah. So it has a note attached. It reminds him of what happened 20 years ago as the dance get closer. And so later at the bar, as Axel and Hollis, the most Canadian dude I've ever seen, play five-finger fillet on the table with their knives.
Is this called that?
It's got a bunch of names, but that's
I just call it Bishop's knife trick.
Yes, yeah. So that's what it is. If you ever seen Aliens, it's the knife thing that Bishop does to Hudson. And the bartender, the movie's stand-in for Crazy Ralph, grimly recites the local legend of Harry Warden.
And you want Canada. This guy's Canadian.
And he is going to tell this story staring straight down the camera lens.
And he does it with such glee in a way, like it has a sing-songy cadence to it.
Yeah. It's.
I think some of it even rhymes.
Yes, it does. You know what it reminded me of, and I'm going to bring it up a little bit later on, is fucking TP's story in Madman.
Yeah. Also, this is when while he's doing this, I don't know if this happens before or after, but like Axel's getting real grabby.
Yes. That I think that kind of comes after, because then they're going to have a thing and she's going to charge off. But 20 years ago on Valentine's Day, on the night of the big dance, a 100-year tradition, 7 miners were still back at the mine, 5 of them still underground, when the methane gas ignited, causing a cave-in. All while the rest of the town danced and made merry, evident by Dutch angle shots of oblivious partygoers lit in menacing fashion.
Yeah, it is real. Like
it's
you really know you're in a flashback.
It's the wish 'em away to the cornfield section of the Twilight Zone movie.
Yeah.
The town did what it could to dig the men out, and when they finally broke through after weeks of digging, they found one man alive, Harry Warden, who survived by eating the other men. So, driven mad, he escapes from a mental hospital and runs wild on Valentine Bluffs on a murderous rampage. He killed everyone at the dance and put their hearts in heart-shaped candy boxes, and he warned the town never have another one of these dances again.
Yeah. No, look, I don't want to be on record supporting murder. But I'm kind of on Harry Warden's side.
Yeah, they were all dancing while he was like eating dudes.
Yep.
Yeah. So Howard, being the Joker, blows a raspberry, which makes everybody laugh.
Yeah.
And the bartender.
I mean, I gotta say, Howard's Borscht Belt shtick, I don't think it's that funny.
I get tired of him immediately. Whenever there's one of these guys in the movies, I just immediately check out on that guy. It's like, I hope he gets killed first, even though they're going to fucking drag it out because they think everybody loves this character.
I mean, and like Howard's like the most likable of them, of the yucksters.
He's the least insulting, I think. Yeah. The bartender tells them to laugh now, but they'll be sorry that they didn't listen to him. So this is where TJ and Sarah have a vague chat about the way things are between the two of them, which pisses off TJ because he's all
because TJ really inappropriate, really disrespectful.
Here's the thing: is he fucking disappeared? Like, what the fuck was she supposed to do? Like, and he was gone for
that is literally what she says.
Yeah. So
so Axel's a piece of shit who's like real, handsy and kind of like borderline abusive, but like. Her other option is TJ. Like, this is life in a small town, everybody. God help you if you're gay. But, she's got 2 choices. One's a weird kind of menacing asshole, and the other one's just kind of like manipulative and gaslighty.
He's also a murderer, but.
Which one
are we talking about?
Spoiler alert, everybody.
At the crime lab, they confirm that the heart is that of a 30-year-old woman, and they need to check to make sure that Harry Warden is still locked up because no one is certain that he is or not.
I love how they're immediately, it's like, well, I guess it's a serial killer because there couldn't possibly be any other explanation.
Yeah. So
it's very much like Ed and Lorraine Warren, where it's like, well, must be the devil because there's no other explanation for the noises you're hearing.
Yeah. So at the laundromat, a man in mining gear watches Mabel. I know, if anybody did not deserve to get fucking killed in this movie, it's poor Mabel.
Mabel is, she is the sweetest lady. She has a crush on the mayor.
Yep.
Or the mayor? No, it's on the...
It's the mayor. No, it's the sheriff.
Maybe it's both.
Oh, fuck. No, it's the sheriff.
She seems like a delightful lady. She's very excited about the Valentine's Day dance. She's the owner, proprietor of Madame Mabel's laundromat.
Laundrette.
I mean, nobody deserves this less.
No. So when she walks away for a moment, the miner seizes the opportunity to drop a Valentine on the table with the rest of her stuff. Now she eagerly opens it and reads.
She looks so happy,
so pleased,
it makes it so much worse.
I know. She reads, "Roses are red, violets are blue. One is dead, and so are you." And then the lights go out, and the miner attacks. And he gets her on the ground and hits her with his pick. So elsewhere at the junkyard, Hollis, Howard,
Just
they're at the dump.
Just cooking dinner on the engine block like you
cooking
do.
TV dinners on the engine of a running automobile while we get a POV shot of someone sneaking around. He sneaks up on Axel, who plays harmonica while sitting in a junked car.
Now, I'll say, having grown up in a rural place, I feel like this is not that far off.
No. Me and my friends used to fuck around at like the worst fucking stupidest places because there's like no cops to like bust up, beer drinking and shit. So,
or engine block
or
cooking.
like they just want to cook their TV dinners
or harmonica playing.
So it turns out that the stalker with the Steadicam is TJ with a bottle of whiskey.
I'd say George Mahalka says this is the first use of, he says initially the first use of Steadicam, and someone in the panel was like, no. And he was like, first use of Steadicam in Canada. Is that true?
That can't be true.
Don't they use Steadicam in Black Christmas?
No, because we actually talk about that where Steadicam
Halloween is one of the first.
Didn't come out until 77 or 78, and that's why the handheld footage in Black Christmas is so fucked up.
Well, Panaglide specifically.
Yeah, Panaglide, but Panaglide was the first Steadicam system.
I find it hard to believe that this is the first time.
This could not possibly be the first time. The thing with that is once that technology became widely available, like everybody jumped on that because the fucking usages of it are so great, especially if you're making a horror movie.
Yeah.
So yeah, this can't possibly be. He's got to be wrong about that.
I mean, I could have looked it up, but God damn it. It is Sunday.
Yeah.
Tired.
You got horror movies to watch. So
or Hallmark movies.
Yeah, you got it. You got a real balance with that one.
I do.
Yeah,
I love them both.
Yeah. So it looks like they're going to bury the hatchet, but then it turns out that TJ wants Axel to leave Sarah to him.
And so this is where you get that love triangle thing that I think is. I mean, as much as I find it distasteful and kind of awful today, I can see why something like this kind of romantic fantasy love triangle would be appealing to younger female audiences.
Yeah.
Well, or younger male audiences, I guess. I shouldn't limit it just to that. But like, I can see why, like, I see this shit as horrible and abusive and manipulative, which is what it is, everybody. If you find yourself in this, extract yourself immediately. It's terrible. But I can see why they would think, this might be like a romantic conundrum.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, it's just
because so much of this movie is built around this love triangle.
Yeah. It's just a fucking love triangle, plot angle. I mean, they've been doing it for as long as there's been movies with romances in them,
And this is where she says, like, you went away. What was I supposed to do? Mm-hmm. And then he says, sure, it's not his fault. It's nobody's fault. And I thought, well, actually, it's your fault.
It's your fault, TJ.
It's your fault.
You went away. And now you're back and you're like.
You left and didn't tell your girlfriend where you were going.
Didn't call, didn't write. So she probably thought that he was dead. Yeah. But, the cops then go to check to see if Harry Warden is still in the institution. It turns out they have no record of him there.
Now, here's the thing about hospitals. If they're good at anything, it's records.
It's record keeping.
Because they don't want to get sued, because they get sued a lot. I find it very hard to believe that you have a high-profile murderer in your hospital at any point, and she acts like she doesn't even know the name.
Yeah.
It wasn't that long ago.
No, but Jesus Christ, yeah, they can't figure out if it's this thing. Now, this is my problem with one of my problems with this movie. I love the movie. I think it's great, but one of the plot sort of failings in this is it can't fucking make up. It's trying to be two things at once without telling you either. It wants you to think. At first, they set up this whole Harry Warden thing, so it's Harry Warden, he's back, but then they do this whodunit thing throughout the rest of the movie. And at no point, I only recently in the last several years came to the realization that I'm supposed to wonder if Axel or TJ is the killer. But the whole fucking movie, they're telling me it's this escaped maniac.
Well, the TJ thing, I think, I kind of get. See, I'm the opposite of that because I feel like they try to do it's Harry Warden thing, and you're like, okay, but you haven't really said much about Harry Warden. And as far as we know, he's locked up somewhere. And even the lady at the hospital who's serving real, you've got to be kidding me face. Even she's just kind of like, who? And so I think we're supposed to the way I've always thought about it is like, it's just somebody and you don't yet know who it is.
Yeah.
I never feel like we're supposed to take seriously that it's Harry Warden.
Oh, yeah. See,
and I think that's part of the kind of convoluted muddiness of what they're trying to do is like, you're never giving me enough of anything.
Yeah.
I guess if anything, it's like you're supposed to. TJ's going to be the red herring. We'll get there. We're going to spoil it anyway. It's not TJ, everybody. He's the red herring because he's the one who just came back, and then his return coincides with the murders. So realistically, who else could it be?
Yeah,
then?
I mean, but also at the same time, like they're really leaning into the Harry Warden thing, like throughout most of the movie, but then they do this whole thing where it's like, since. Like somebody will go and get killed, and then fucking Axel is just back in his clothes in the same location. Like he never, it's a part that doesn't fucking work. It's not enough to really make me go fuck this movie, obviously, because I fucking love it.
Yeah,
but it's just.
But I think that also speaks to the fact that they've built up enough of a sort of character study that you don't really care about the, and then there were none aspect of it. Like whatever. Yeah. It doesn't matter who it is.
Yeah. Also, this movie takes its time. Like most of the back, it's really heavily loaded with violence in the back.
Which is funny because that was another one of the criticisms. I actually dug through a lot of reviews because I checked a lot of American reviews, contemporary reviews. And then I was like, I wonder if it got different reviews in Canada. The answer is no. It was sort of universally rejected. But the funny thing is a lot of them are like, it's so slow. It drags out this, this whole thing. And it's like, so wait a minute. You all get real fucking pissy when it's violent from beginning to end. And now you're pissy because it's too romantic.
It's got pacing problems on top of it all.
I think the issue might be that it's a horror movie.
I personally don't think that it has pacing problems.
No,
I think that it's quite snappy. It moves along. It's got characters that I actually like.
I think it spaces out the set pieces in a way that is to its benefit, because even when you're getting drama, because you do care about these characters, maybe not quite to the extent that you do say like Halloween,
right?
But you still do care about them. Like you do want to see this kind of unfold, and however it unfolds, I'd like a little more Hollis personally.
More Hollis, less Axel.
It is very male focused, obviously, just because they work in the mine. But
those are the guys. Yeah, those were the guys who were making the movies. There's actually a part where the mine's got rules. No chicks.
No women.
Yep.
No women in the mines.
No women in the mines.
And I thought, well, that's sexist.
Yeah. So then there's a bit of agonizing on Sarah's part about whether she wants to be with TJ or Axel. Well, maybe she ought to dump the both of them.
I kind of like, is this the part when they're walking down the street though?
Yeah. Because I like Patty a lot too.
Yeah, Patty's great. And I like this part in a way because there is, I feel like when you watch movies of this era, there's always something really refreshing about seeing women sort of talk openly and maybe with enthusiasm, maybe not so much about sex, but just in general about relationships and about sexuality. Because Patty's sort of like, I'd take them both myself. And it's like, there is something really nice about those, like the Annie Bracketts and the Lindas, where it's just like, this is just how people talk when you're with your friends.
Yeah.
It's like, it's not, no one's being portrayed as sort of morally bankrupt or slutty because she's talking about sex.
Another point I had about this is this does not play that game.
No, this movie makes no judgments about these people at all.
Yeah. Yeah. So,
I just like when you see people just sort of be like, this is just ladies talking about, because there is that idea of like, well, women are they're not interested in this. It's like, yes, they are.
Yeah. Yes, they are.
I mean, does this movie pass the Bechdel test? Not even a little.
No, not even close.
But it is still nice to see them just sort of being a little bit more honest in terms of their portrayal.
Yeah. So the sheriff then drops by Mabel's laundrette to talk.
Meanwhile, my heart is breaking.
Yeah, talk to her about the dance. Makes a terrible discovery when he smells burning and finds all these heart decorations inverted. One of the dryers is smeared with blood and pops open, revealing the badly burned body of Mabel, just tumbling in the dryer over and over. I think the tumbling,
so hard.
The tumbling makes her death so much worse.
Yeah,
because she's just like rolling and rolling and rolling.
Now, my first thought was, how has this been going all night if no one's there to put quarters in?
It's a really long dryer cycle.
Also, this is the only death scene in this entire movie that the MPAA didn't have, like, had no problems with it.
Which is crazy because it's probably
it's
the most
hard.
gruesome. Yeah.
But the thing is, it's the most emotionally devastating, but it's not the most graphic because there's nothing graphic about it. It's just a burned up, kind of melty corpse tumbling around in a dryer, quite literally tumbling in the dryer.
Quite literally tumbling. Yeah. So
but there's nothing like exceedingly violent. It's like, so, and I think again, that goes to that idea of like, oh, this is about like moral gatekeeping. Like this should be the worst death of the movie because it's so heartbreaking.
Yeah. Yeah. They really weren't thinking, or maybe the MPAA has to be objective. Maybe they just didn't give a fuck about the sort of quality of the character.
It's an older sort of spinsterish woman who dies in this way. There's nothing sexual about it. There's not like, it's not gratuitous. I mean, I would argue it is kind of gratuitous since she's flopping around a melted corpse. But I just think it's odd that like this is the worst death in the entire movie, I would say.
Yeah.
And they don't really seem to give a shit.
No. It's really weird. But yeah. The effects are all done by a guy named Tom Berman, or rather he had a studio that he was the head of.
And he fucking nails it every single time. These are really, really cool, really inventive, makeup and effects.
Yeah. Yeah. So he had previously worked on movies like Phantom of the Paradise and the 78 Body Snatchers movie. He also worked on Happy Birthday to Me the same year.
Also a great movie.
Yeah. And the Blu-ray features an interview with him where he uses a really peculiar phrase to describe horror movies. He calls it graphic repulsion. And he says it over and over. And it's pretty clear to me that he didn't care for horror movies. Because this is one of the last ones.
Weird line of work.
I know. But which this sort of, he still does violent special effects because he also worked on The Exterminator and shit. And his studio.
So he had standards.
Yeah. His studio goes on to work goes to work on stuff like Teen Wolf. He did some X-Files, and his studio did the makeup work for Sloth in the Goonies. So now, down in the mine, the boys are having a bit of static. Axel wants to send TJ deeper down into the pit to check the sump, which I guess is a shit job. And it's all because of Sarah. TJ moves like he's going to fight Axel, who, so help me God, says, anytime hoser.
Does he really?
I swear to God, he says hoser.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
But again, this is just TJ being disrespectful and wildly inappropriate.
Yeah.
Like, hey, man, she's not your fucking girlfriend. Stop doing that.
I know.
It's really rude.
He just kind of thought he'd step back into the saddle, like he'd never
and then
left.
It gets even worse.
Yeah.
What he does next is even worse.
Yeah. So at the laundrette, the sheriff is doing his best to keep a lid on the murder. He finds a Valentine inside the corpse, which reads, "It happened once. It happened twice. Cancel the dance, or it'll happen thrice."
Yeah, it's really hard that he pulls it out of her chest cavity.
Yeah. But I love that the killer's got a little poetry in him.
He's got a little sense of whimsy.
Yeah. So they decide that they have to cancel the dance, which is letting the terrorists win, if you ask me.
Yeah, and that is not American at all. Thank God it's Canada.
So TJ races over to wherever it is that Sarah works, and he steals her, despite her telling him that she doesn't want to go with him.
Yeah, she's like, why can't you just leave me alone?
Yeah. So they go out to the coast for a tender moment.
Man, I gotta say, I love that their spot is like an estuary just filled with industrial runoff and overrun with seagulls.
Just mining slurry and seagull shit everywhere.
Dear God.
I know.
It is grim.
And
life in Valentine Bluff is grim.
It's grim. And maybe that's why he's so fucking desperate to have some sort of normalcy return to his life. I mean, he's a gigantic fucking baby about it, and he begs her to come back to him. Despite
he really is. He is American masculinity, albeit Canadian, but it really is this idea of like, but you're supposed to be here for me.
Yeah, yeah. He apologizes, saying that he's so damn sorry, and then they kiss.
What I do like about this moment is she calls him Jesse, which I think is it's a really nice touch that you could just totally,
I had to look that up. I had to look that up to see like if she fucked up and called him by the actor's name, but no, his name is
Jay.
His name is Thomas Jesse Hanniger, and I think most of us would infer from context that is his name.
But I just think it's a nice sort of, it conveys an intimacy that, again, you don't really get that in a lot of these other movies. They're taking the time to kind of give these touches that really make this elevate it a little bit.
Yeah. It kicks it up a notch.
Yes, and I'm sorry. I'm so damn sorry.
So damn sorry. So back at the bar, everybody's bummed about the dance being canceled. So they decide to throw a party instead. TJ.
Look, if we're not going to have a Valentine's dance, why don't we have a Valentine's party?
Yep.
Bitch, those are the same thing.
TJ suggests that they do it in the mine, which sounds like a terrible place to have a party based entirely on what I've seen of the mine so far. But everybody is really amped up to party there. I misunderstood that they're not going to do it in the mine. They're going to do it at the mine rec room.
Right.
And so
also, this is where you get there's some really awesome songs, some of those Paul Zaza songs in there.
I love that.
Sound a lot like Linda Ronstadt songs. Like they're really great kind of folksy rock. Awesome. Also, those are on the soundtracks.
That's
Purchase
great.
The soundtrack, you get those.
That's the thing is there's a lot. I think if this were any other movie, they would have just done what like George Romero does, where they just like pick like library tracks.
Yeah, you just
of
buy
like,
library music
of like country-ish kind of music or like banjo tracks. But fucking Paul Zaza like composes his own songs.
I mean, library music, I don't think they kind of stopped doing it in the 70s in the US, at least. Obviously in places like Italy and France, it was huge. Is still kind of huge.
It falls off somewhere in the early 80s. And I think it was mostly because
even in the 70s though, like once you get like into like the sort of that new Hollywood movement where it's like you want either they stop using orchestral scores and stuff like that.
Yeah.
You want people to make unique, film scores.
Well, sure. And also some of the studios either get bought by larger companies that own music labels or they buy into like music labels or they start their own.
That's why you end up with a lot of those soundtracks that are like, why are these all very timely? Like, it's one or two bands you've heard of and then a shitload of stuff you've never heard of. And that's because they made a deal with a record label to promote all the new stuff. And in exchange, they gave them, a New Kids on the Block song.
Yeah. Yeah. Like we talked about
that
this
kind of deal.
We talked about this a bit on our Vamp episode.
Yeah.
But yeah, so Hap, the crazy bartender, tells them to forget about it or they'll be sorry. So later on, to teach those damned kids a lesson, Hap goes over to the mine, sets up a scare involving a mining uniform.
Also, I mean, man, Hap is really fucking insensitive. Mabel just died.
He is.
Have some goddamn respect.
Yep. Also, hell of an engineer.
I also thought, like, this is quite a prank. You're very elaborate.
He's very, very proud of it, and he should be because it's a very elaborate pulley system.
He is very proud of it. He is amused beyond belief.
Yeah, cackling like a madman as he tests it out. But on his last test, he happily throws the door open.
Yeah.
And it's the real miner this time who swings his pick and catches Hap under the jaw, knocking his eye out. And then he drags the body away.
This is one of the ones that the MPAA really objected to because it's not just the visuals. The visual is the pick part of the pickaxe comes up through the bottom of his chin and out through his eye. And then it makes this sound that's really gross. And then he drags him by that through the gravel.
Oh, it's so cool.
Fucking brutal.
Very brutal. Yeah. So now on the night of Valentine's Day, the fellas and their sweethearts bust into the mine's rec room with all the Molson and Moosehead they can carry, just ready to party.
Oh man.
At the police station, another Valentine has arrived. The chief cautiously opens it, expecting more gore, but finds nothing but a box of chocolates instead.
God, Mabel loved Valentine's Day so much.
Sent to him from Mabel before she died. God damn it. Mabel, I'm so sorry.
What you get, I think, something else you get in this that you don't get, and especially in later scenes, you get a lot of male emotion.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah. Like when she dies, like his reaction is visceral.
And then when he gets the chocolate, he's shaken, not so much because he thought it was going to be a heart, but because it's from Mabel and he is deeply moved and then kind of heartbroken.
Yeah.
And we'll get this a little bit later too. But there's a lot of moments where it's like men reacting in ways that you would naturally react. Like it's not the sort of stoicism or let's go, kill this menace. It's very real.
You know why it is? Because it's Canada and not America. Yeah.
Yep.
They're just dudes being dudes up there.
And hey, look, I have no illusions. I'm sure Canada has a shitload of problems. As a matter of fact, I know they do. But
we're exaggerating a little bit over here. But yeah.
But I do love their country a lot.
So at the party, everybody's getting crazy. Axel arrives with Sarah, and they're also boiling hot dogs out back in the kitchen.
Axel arrives with Sarah, and he's being real fucking handsy.
Super gross with her.
Because for a very long time when I worked downtown, I rode the train to work every day and rode the buses to work every day. And you see a lot of like young men being handsy with their girlfriends. And it's like, it's obviously it's an insecurity thing. I don't really give a fuck what the reason is. I find it really upsetting. And I really don't like watching men handle women. I don't like people doing it in general, but like just grabbing and moving and manipulating. It's a very controlling thing to do. Shelley Winters does it as well.
Yeah, we see it
in her pictures.
We see it with the Eagle in Burnt Offerings.
Yeah. But like he does it in this a lot. And I mean, I think it's a good choice in this because you're not supposed to like Axel.
No. But also this is also highly performative just to sort of set TJ off.
Yeah. And I think I don't know if we're supposed to root for TJ either, but I think we kind of are.
I think we are, but God, why? He's such a fucking jerk and such a baby.
They both fucking suck. They're two sides of the same fucking gross man baby coin. Yeah. But I just hate watching men like manhandle women. Yeah. And he does it throughout the whole thing. And every time I bristle.
Yeah. So one of the unarmed miner guys goes back to get a hot dog, and the miner strikes, stuffing his head in the pot, boiling him to death, sleepaway camp style.
But again, for a guy who didn't like horror, he's really fucking good at horror effects.
He is. These are fucking outstanding effects. Because he explains how they did it, and I was like, damn, that's really fucking clever.
Yeah.
Because it's like layers of different sort of material that are like reactive to water and like temperature in different ways. So like, it's not like they applied a little bit of makeup and then they applied a little bit of a makeup. Like they put his head in there, and just over time, it sort of like eroded and sort of boiled away. It's cool. It's a fucking
and
awesome.
I'm not a gore person at all, but everything in this movie is really
I love
really
a skillful effect that requires a lot of like technique. Like when I can look at an effect and look at it in the same way that I might like a magic trick, like I really love that shit. So outside the police station, another gory Valentine has been left behind by the miner, and this is what we were talking about. There's all these like dogs like trying to chew through the baggage.
Rough.
It's pretty heavy
because they're like fighting each other, and then the chief comes out and they're like snapping at him.
Yeah. This time the card says, "You didn't stop the party," and I'm really disappointed that there's no rhyme. But also, the sheriff is completely unaware of the party. He's like, "What party?"
There's a party going on. He can't do everything.
No,
it takes a while. Even if you're coming up with a bit, you got to give it time. He's got things to do.
Yeah. So back at the party, Axel is all over Sarah, who's not having it, and then Axel and TJ fight. It takes Hollis, good old Hollis, to break it up. Sarah
and Hollis is a man beast.
He is a large man.
He grabs them both and. I don't know, some sort of bear hug.
And it's a weird, it's like a weird, half Nelson, but on both of them at the same time.
Yeah.
That's so yeah.
And then Sarah speaks up and she's like, just shut up, both of you. And it's like, okay, I kind of like this a little bit. Like, I like that she's sort of exercising her agency and speaking up. But it'd be really great is if she just fucking dished both these losers.
Yeah. Yep. To break up the tension, Howard snorts some beer up his nose. Everybody loves it.
Yeah. They all just go right back to partying.
Yep. So elsewhere in the mine, a couple of unnamed victims be fooling around in carts that take all the dudes down into the mine. And she sets up an "I'll be right back" moment when she asks her boyfriend if he knows what they need. And he produces a condom, but this being Canada, she corrects him, telling them that they need a couple of beers.
This is a really cool moment, though, because they've got the scene where it's the uniforms, I guess.
I would imagine that is a mining thing that I
feel like they probably walked it. So if you've not seen the film, they have all of their, like, I don't know, it's not a uniform, but it's like coveralls, I guess.
It's coveralls, it's breathing apparatus, it's helmets.
And it's all hanging from the ceiling.
Yeah.
In this way that, like, you would pull a cord and they would drop down. And I imagine this is the kind of thing where they walked in and they were like, holy shit, we're working this in somehow, because this seems like just a real thing that exists somewhere.
Yeah, I'm trying to understand like the why of it, because it doesn't really make sense.
I guess just to save space, probably.
Maybe
because you don't have a lot of space if you're
because it's legitimately cool. Like, and the way that they use it is great.
And it's like it's the kind of thing where like you see it more now. Like if someone walks into a store at night that's closed and it's like mannequin, things covered in like sheets.
Yeah,
it's that kind of thing where it's just like vaguely human looking things and they're all hanging from the ceiling in this precarious way.
Yeah. So he goes to get the beers in the rec room. A couple of girls find a boiled heart with hot dogs. And he
must have been Howard.
And he, oblivious, misses the dude's dead body chilling in the fridge. So back in the mine, the girl thinks her boyfriend is back taking a shower for some reason. So she goes to check. And then the miner, unseen, scares the crap out of her by dropping all the clothes that are hanging on those hooks. But he herds her around with these dropping clothes until she finds Hap's dead body. And then he attacks her, lifting her up by the head, violently impaling her on one of the shower pipes.
Which is a callback to when they arrive at
because that guy like lifts her up by her head.
Yeah, it's very weird and aggressive, but
she is delighted when it happens.
Well, she's not delighted this time. This is the coolest kill in the entire movie.
Yeah, he like lifts her up, and there's like a shower head that is just a pipe. He fucking spikes her head on it.
And now, originally, she was wearing a Angora sweater when they filmed this, and so the Angora just as a fabric it's sort of it's like a hydrophobic fabric, and so all the blood and water was like beading off and just kind of rolling down it.
Yeah,
and he was like, "God damn it!" So they had to do it again. It's like this is the seacoast in late September.
Yeah,
and so they had to shoot this whole thing again with a different sweater.
Yeah. So her boyfriend, whose name is John, arrives thinking that she's in the shower, and he gets all excited. He's like, all right.
Again, like you're at a party with like a couple dozen people. Is this the time for shower sex?
Also, that's a grimy, nasty shower because it's like fucking coal runoff.
And he's just like super into it.
Yeah. He starts to undress until he finds her dead body impaled on the pipe, and blood and water is just pouring out of her mouth.
And it is really, really awful.
Yeah, it's up there with Daniela Doria's death in City of the Living Dead. With the
I have not seen that in a very long time.
That's the gut vomit scene.
Yeah. I'm gonna watch that later tonight.
Fucking A.
Because I got Night Flight. It's on there.
Ooh, very nice.
No, so his reaction is, this is sort of what I was getting at earlier. His reaction is another example of, this is someone who has been legitimately traumatized because, I mean, I don't know how to react when you stumble upon something like this. But he maintains this because this is not the only time you see him.
Oh no, he's gonna come back and be really like fucked up about this.
And he is like, he is crying hysterically. There is snot pouring out of his nose, and this is again the defying that idea of masculinity. I really appreciate that.
So elsewhere, the girls all want the guys to take them down to the mine.
Great idea.
Yeah. They relent after some resistance, but as they're about to go, TJ rushes out to stop them, reminding them.
TJ says, no women in the mine.
No women in the mine. They go down anyways. And man, are these girls into the mine.
Yeah, I mean, it's dark, it's cold, you'll have trouble breathing. Yep. I mean, it sounds great.
Yeah, you might blow up because of a methane buildup.
Oh, that was the other thing we failed to mention is that this was an active mine until they started shooting in this. So they could only use maximum 50-watt bulbs.
Yeah. Otherwise.
So everything is shot in low light.
Yeah. They used really high speed film too. So all the shit that's shot in the mine has a particular look to it. It's kind of cool.
I actually learned why that was. And this was something that I think it's late 70s, early 80s. I think it was Kodak had created a new low light film, but the grain on the film is much larger. And that's why it has that sort of, it's not grainier. It looks a little bit blown out.
Yeah.
And that's why it looks that way.
Yeah. So while they're down there, one couple peels off for a little privacy in this oh so romantic mine.
Yeah. Like, hey, Hollis, we're just going to branch off and go fuck in this dirty mine. Be right back.
Yep. Maybe
this is the point where the movie gets really mean.
Yeah, this is honestly, maybe it's a worse place to fuck than the dump.
Hilarious.
Yeah, back up top, however, the body of the boiled dude has been found, and John stumbles in to tell everyone that his girl is dead too. They all come to the conclusion that Harry Warden is on the loose. Now, TJ tries to call the cops.
To which everyone says, "Who?"
Yeah, and TJ and Axel suit up to go down and get Sarah. So there's some more goofs on everybody down in the mine until they
act like it's like so glamorous down in the mine. They're like, "Oh, this is so great! What a novelty!" It's like it's a fucking filthy hole in the earth.
Yeah,
that's literally what it is.
Yeah, they realize that their couple is missing. So they're all off making out, of course. But as this is happening, the miner is running loose in the tunnel, smashing up the lights.
Oh, that scene is fucking cool as hell.
It's cool as hell. It really is. Up top, some of the kids.
And that's where that low light film really lends itself because it just looks, there's something so stark about that scene.
Mm-hmm. So up top, some of the kids who fled the party, they get the sheriff who then rushes over to the mine. Now down in the mine, TJ finds everybody, minus Axel and the makeout couple.
And it's got a real, is it TJ that has a real kicky scarf wrapped around his neck?
Yes, he's got, first of all, he's got his shirt unbuttoned down to his fucking navel. And he's got this like little like blue scarf, like jaunty little scarf.
It's a real Charles Nelson Riley look, and I appreciate it.
Yeah. So Hollis runs off to find the makeout couple and finds
this is an interesting part though, because Howard says, because he leaves to be like, I'm going to go that way. Howard, stay here with them. And Howard says, I don't even know my way around here. And there's something so ominous about that line.
Right. Because it's a callback to an earlier gag.
Because Howard is not one of the regular crew.
No, he's new. And they left him down there after the shift, to sort of like as like a hazing ritual. And so now he's down there and he's like, what the fuck do I do? Yeah. Hollis runs to find the makeout couple. He finds the two of them run through Friday the 13th Part 2 style.
So there was this was a scene they did film, and this was the scene that the MPAA made them cut the whole scene.
Of them actually getting run through?
It is them having sex, and this is because this is at a time when, up until now, essentially, until this point in the 80s, there was sex and there was violence, and they would cut for these things. Sex and violence together was a new thing.
Yeah.
And that's what this is, because they die in a way that integrates the sex and the violence in a way that, like, personally, I've always found the sort of mingling of these things to be really upsetting. I don't like the two of them together. But that was why they were like, he was like, well, so how much do we have to cut? And they were like, the whole scene has to go. We're not letting you through with this scene.
Yeah.
But it's like, my other question is, has this weird sex den always been down here in the mine?
Oh, I know. Yeah.
Because it's like a fucking mattress on the floor and like a little end table.
Oh, God. So much coal dust. Getting in the... I'm not going to go there.
Yeah, just all up in your parts.
Yeah. In your folds.
Yeah, up in your mine. If I'd given it more thought, I could have come up with something better.
I really put you on the spot with that.
I'm working without a net here.
Yeah. So Hollis then has the misfortune of running into the miner, who shoots him in the temple and then the forehead with a nail gun.
This is the second worst death of the entire movie.
Yeah.
And whereas like the Mabel thing is like, oh, she's such a sweet lady. It's so hard to watch this happen. This death is cruel in a way that I cannot think of a comparable scene.
Yeah, because it's not particularly gory.
No, it's just mean and up close.
Yeah, and also
because he shoots him in the side of the head with a nail gun, and then he loads it again and shoots him in the forehead, and he's still alive as he sort of stumbles out to where they are. And there's something so hard about this that it's just like, it is mean and cold, and this is a character you really come to like.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really The Burning has moments like this too, where.
But The Burning is an almost nihilistic movie in general. I fucking hate that movie.
Yeah. So
that is a movie, y'all. It's a movie you will never hear us talk about.
I'm kind of ambivalent about that one.
It's a Weinstein picture in all the ways.
Yeah. So Howard runs away, but Sarah and Patty stay
he
behind.
just fucking runs off.
Yeah, completely bails on them.
Now that I have trouble with that as well, because he's goofy and he's the jokester. He doesn't really come across as sort of like this callous coward, though.
Right. But also, I don't. This is not really.
He sort of runs away in this way of like, "Come on, everybody, let's go."
Because this is. I don't really see that as this is cowardly. This is him panicking.
Yeah.
But yeah, because he tries to get him to go with him, but they don't, because Patty is
not having it. She cannot move.
No.
And this is a little bit like John in the previous scenes where it's like, this is how you would react if someone was shot in the head twice with a nail gun and then fell down in front of you. Like, she refuses to go.
Yeah. Sarah, the only one of them doing any thinking, pulls the light off of Hollis, does her best to get Patty to focus, and she slaps her.
Yeah, this is the best part, though. It's great because she goes, "I can't make it anymore." And Sarah goes, "Shut up. Yes, you can."
Yeah. So
Sarah feels very resourceful in a way that feels natural, and it doesn't feel contrived in that sort of final girl way.
Yeah. Yeah. So Axel suddenly arrives to help get them out of the mine, but nobody can find TJ. And so a little ways later, at a fork in the tunnel, the three of them hear somebody approaching, and we see what looks like the miner approaching. And then Axel hits him with a board. It turns out to be TJ. So when they get back to the elevator shaft, they find the controls have been smashed up, trapping them in the mine, kind of. But there's a ladder, though, and they climb, but it's a really long climb. This is, as I believe Hollis says as they're going down, it's 2,000 feet down.
Yeah, it's they are literally 2,000 feet underground.
Yeah. So
the elevator, George Malika says the elevator would take 15 minutes to get everybody down.
That is crazy.
So like when you go down there, you are down there for the duration of the day.
Yeah. So Patty is scared. She keeps stopping. And Axel at the top of the group climbs faster than everybody else. And then they eventually reach a spot where Patty slips and it sends Howard's body tumbling downward. And he's dead by the miner's hands and suspended from a rope by the neck. But the sudden stop at the end of the rope tears his head from his body.
Not for long. Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
This is another part that's like, oh, God. And apparently this scene was supposed to be much longer.
Yeah. You get a sense.
They were
you can get a
supposed
sense
to
of that.
linger on his body and his head for a while. And I don't know if I think they just didn't shoot it that way, but like it was supposed to be longer. It does not need to be any longer. It is very effective as is.
Right. Cause and also it's not a lingering shot. It's very quick, but it's long enough for you to see basically the body drops, hits the end of the rope, and then the body just tears away from the head.
Yeah. You know what happens, and it is deeply upsetting.
Yep. They all climb back down. At the bottom, they decide to go to the rail cars and leave that way, but they have to go through the sump. And so as they're crossing the sump, which is basically, it's just a fucking pit of water. So the railing breaks and Axel appears to fall in. His light is disappearing into the pit of water, but we don't actually see him fall in.
So did you watch the interview with the guy who plays TJ?
Yes.
And they say, well, why didn't your character jump in and try to save him?
I think that his response...
What a fucking stupid question.
The question's not quite... Not just that. It's like, why didn't you jump in to save him? It would have been easy to do. And I'm sitting here thinking, they're all wearing like mining equipment and their clothes. Have you ever tried to swim in your fucking clothes?
The easy answer is, I didn't write the script.
Yeah.
Question mark?
Yeah.
But the second answer is like, because it's super deep and it's like filthy water in which you cannot see a single thing.
Yeah.
And he even says in the movie, it's 60 feet deep.
Yeah. Yeah. So a ways further, TJ sends the girls ahead on their own and disappears down a nearby tunnel for unknown reasons. They're really kind of dragging this, like, which of these guys is the killer thing out. Like I said, I always thought that I was supposed to think that it was this escaped killer, but whatever. As the girls are escaping, the miner suddenly emerges and hits Patty in the stomach with the pick, killing her.
There's something so again, every one of these deaths is kind of terrible from when they get here on.
Yeah.
But like, there's something so unceremonious about her death. Like, everyone else has this really fucking graphic, gnarly death.
She just gets it in the stomach. Yeah.
And that's it. And then they just move on. There's something I think almost sadder about that.
Like they didn't,
because she's another one that you really like.
Yeah,
she just kind of gets it in the stomach.
She's
and
got
they
great
move
personality. Yeah. So Sarah escapes. TJ eventually finds her, and they arrive at the mine carts. So
This is where it gets a little Scooby-Doo for me.
Yeah. So at the top,
there is literally a part in Resident Evil 4 where you do this exact thing.
Yeah. So at the top, the police show up with a bunch of miners, and they start to make their way down. Then the miner finds TJ and Sarah as they board the mine cars. TJ fights them with a shovel. It's not a half bad set piece. They eventually tumble off, fight some more, leading him into a dangerous off-limits part of the mine. Their fighting does a lot of damage to the supports. And so when the miner's pick gets stuck in the wall, he attacks with a knife that looks a lot like the knife from the first Scream. Mm-hmm. And Sarah takes the opportunity to pull the miner's mask off. We see that it's not Harry Warden, but it's Axel.
I actually hate this part a little bit.
I do too.
Because of the look on his face.
Yeah. Like,
where I'm just like, why does he look stunned? Like, first of all, it's not that big a reveal. Like, it's going to be one of the two of them, and he's the one who's not there.
Yeah,
so
yeah. Apparently, when they made the movie, they saved the last of the script pages. They kept them away from the cast, and they shot the ending last. And both actor was supposed to play like maybe I'm the killer.
Either one of them.
But I think it's the guy who plays Axel says that like they sent me off to Hollywood to have a cast of my arm made, so I just kind of did the math. So we flash back to Axel's youth, and his father is getting ready for the big Valentine Bluffs dance when Harry Warden strikes and kills him in front of Axel, tearing out his heart.
Again, I don't want to be on the record supporting murder, but I kind of feel like Axel's father kind of had it coming.
Yep. So Axel, traumatized, hides under the bed.
I don't know why that scene to me feels a lot like the opening to Pieces.
This one, no, the one in Pieces is very silly. This one really kind of bums me out because right before they cut away, the kid is traumatized and just
gets
frozen.
A spray of blood across his face.
And he fucking sticks his thumb in his mouth. And that part, for some reason, just feels a little meaner than it needed to be. I don't know why it bums me out the way that it does.
I think that is the weird thing about this movie, because they do the first, I'm going to say 2/3 of this is they invest so much in the emotional story, the core of the story. And then they really lean into tearing it apart in a way that feels unnecessarily cruel.
It's mean and it's ghoulish, but in
a way that I kind of appreciate.
Sure. Yeah. Like there's not I can't think of another movie of the period apart from maybe The Burning again that goes the distance in the same way that this one does. Cause
The Burning, I just feels is slimy and sleazy,
it's vicious,
in an exploitation kind of way. It's in that kind of maniac way. This is in a way that it almost knows what it's doing by killing Hollis in this way. It knows that it is killing the teddy bear of the movie in this really awful way.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing is it stands out because none of the other slashers have done this. Like Friday the 13th isn't even half as gory as this movie is, but it doesn't invest in the characters. Doesn't invest in the characters in the same way. So like the deaths just feel like deaths, like they're just, checking them off on the list.
And
like
so
this
again,
one,
I think this is a good, in defiance of, and I hate to do this because I think we put a lot, not we, because I don't, but I think in general, horror people, once they kind of, younger audiences caught on to sort of the Carol Clover argument, the final girl argument, people invest a lot in that. And the reality is that Carol Clover's argument is she is not right, I don't think. She's not. I think that.
We talked about it. We talked about it in the Halloween episode, in that it's a bit antiquated.
It is, and it's also just one person's perspective that she's coming at from a very feminist perspective, and it's fine. I think it's useful. It's contributed quite a lot to the discourse in general. But the idea that these are all about killing people for transgressions, it's kind of awful. And I think this movie demonstrates why she's not right, because we get attached to, I think, the men more than the women, and they're killed in the same way. And the reason that it works is because we care. It's the same reason why we hate to see Annie and Linda die in Halloween. It's because we like them so much. And that's why I hate that argument of like, well, it's because of their moral failings or whatever. And it's like, no, it's because these people actually took the time to build out characters that we care about.
Yeah.
They should be celebrated and held up for making a movie like this, and unfortunately, they're not.
Yeah. So, using this distraction, TJ pushes Axel into the wall, which causes a collapse, trapping him under the rubble. Now, TJ and Sarah run into the rescuers as the sheriff informs them that just before all this mayhem, they got a call from the hospital that Warden died 5 years ago.
Well, I'm glad the hospital got their shit together.
I know.
That's why you don't call on the weekend.
No. So the rescuers dig Axel out, eventually revealing his arm. And this is one of my favorite parts of the entire movie.
Well, no, Sarah has to go running back first. Why? Because she's a woman and she's fickle.
Yeah. So Sarah reaches out for him and he grabs her arm. And we cut to the inside of the rubble. Axel busily works on severing his own worm with a knife. And then
I really like about this part, though, is that they could have used this as a jump scare. Jason comes out of the water moment, and they don't. And he does grab her in a way that you're kind of like,
yeah.
But it's not a big jump scare. It's sort of like you know it's coming.
Yeah. They pull Sarah back and she yanks his severed arm free. Yeah. So on the other side, he flees like a madman, cursing the town as he does, softly saying, "Sarah, be my bloody Valentine."
Now, this could have been cheesy as shit because it's obviously so ADR and it's a little goofy.
Yeah.
I think it works though because it sounds so hollow and spooky.
Yeah. Yep.
It's a great line.
Laughing like a madman, we fade to black. Yep. Soft folk ballad about Harry Warden by Paul Zaza plays. Roll credits.
No, that's not Paul Zaza.
Oh, it's not?
Well, he did. He wrote it. I can't remember the guy's name. He's I think Scottish folk singer.
Oh, yeah.
Because Paul Zaza had wanted to have like a real banger of a closing song, and they were like, "Sorry, we don't have the money." And he was like, "All right, well, I know this guy. He's pretty good. I think we can get him to do it."
Yeah.
And they do, and it's a great song.
This makes me re-examine my claim that Madman Mars was the first slasher to get his own theme song, because this movie was released in February of '81, and
That's
Madman was released in October.
Yeah, and it is fantastic.
Yep. So I stand corrected. Though I think the Madman Mars song is better.
And Fiend.
Scene. Yep.
And I ask to you, we are now, what is it, 42 years from this movie.
Mm-hmm.
How does this one hold up?
I think it holds up better than most.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't have a legacy behind it like Friday the 13th. But in a lot of ways, that kind of works against Friday the 13th. Since that kind of series falls apart pretty quickly. It's great. It's got fucking awesome special effects. It has very peculiar qualities to it that other movies don't have. And like watching it and sort of examining it very closely revealed to me just like how deep that kind of craftsmanship of the movie runs. Like it was made by a person who was very early in his career, and he still, despite the fact that he was making a movie that was kind of foisted upon him by the executive producer.
Yeah, you still get the feeling though he takes it very seriously. And you from reading interviews and watching interviews, you get the feeling that he took it very seriously, and he didn't really think of it like it was just a horror movie.
No, he set out to, despite it, being a horror movie, he set out to make a good movie, and he took it seriously, and it fucking benefits because of it. I'm glad that the more violent version came out, because prior to me seeing that one, I really kind of let this one kind of go. And without that stuff, it doesn't really quite have the impact that it does. There's something visceral and nasty, and it really kind of hurts a little bit more when your favorite characters die.
Yeah, it's like watching Barb die in Black Christmas. You're like, oh God, I hate that.
Yeah. So no, this is a movie that really fucking holds up very well.
I'm sort of a yes and no on it. I mean, in some, again, yes and a no.
There are parts of it that definitely do not hold up.
Yeah, the gender politics stuff, I'm a little like, it's tired and it doesn't really work anymore. It feels a little gross, and it's kind of tough to watch that part of it. But if you can set that aside, I think that this is a very underappreciated movie that probably got overshadowed by the MPAA part, by the fact that it is Canadian. So, it kind of gets lumped in with a lot of the sort of junkier stuff that was coming out at the time.
Yep, and Americans are racist against Canadians.
But like it is a representation of what you can achieve when you just approach something professionally And, because how many of these fucking movies have we watched where the directors are like, well, I didn't really like horror pictures, but whatever.
Yeah, yeah.
This
Like
guy
most of
was
the
just
time
like,
when I do the cast part and I talk about the directors, like if it's not a person who's kind of had an interest in horror, there most of my commentary was, well, they did some TV after this and then they vanish, and like that's that. But like George Mihalka moves out of this eventually. He doesn't really do genre stuff after this, but he takes it as seriously as anything else, and the fucking movie is better for it.
Yeah, I mean, you've got professional. All of these are professional people working professionally in sort of at the top of their craft, and I think that you come away with a movie that is, I think, it's a pretty tight film that is still really fun to watch. It is really affecting in a lot of ways. It feels a little dated, it looks a little dated, but in general, I think it still works really well, and I'm glad that it's finding a bigger audience. And I'm glad that it's also contributing to the sort of emerging discussions and interest in Canadian movies in general, because I think throughout the 70s and 80s, the Canadian film scene did kind of blow up, and there's a lot of really cool stuff that was coming out. And we're only just getting to see it now. When I'm only just getting into Canadian genre stuff now because of like Canadian International Pictures, that new company that Vinegar Syndrome is distributing. They're putting out a lot of genre stuff that's really cool. And so it's just nice to see stuff from another country that is very similar to what was coming out of the US, but it's just never been seen. Yeah. And I think this is a good representation of that. Out of all the schlocky shit that was coming out because of the tax breaks, this one is like miles ahead.
Yeah. Yeah. It really was. It's just fucking, there's a reason that it endures like it does. Not to mention, and we covered it up top too, like fucking awesome killer on top of it.
Really cool looking. I mean, that's why NECA just keeps putting out that same fucking minor figure over and over again. And every time they do, I'm just going to keep buying it.
Yeah.
Why? Because I'm a dummy who throws money at everything.
Yeah. All right. So there it is. My Bloody Valentine. So awesome. We'll see you next time with our big anniversary show.
That's right.
When we're covering Dawn of the Dead. So stay with us. We'll see you then.